Right, this is going to be another episode of Snake and Banter here with me and Mauisnake. And we have our guest for this one, which is Rejin, or Rejin, depends which you say, who is the coach of TSM. If people don't know, a long time ago, he was also the coach of MOUZ Sports. That had Carrigan and Robson, the one that did the 5 finals and won the CS2 Asia Championship. And ESL Pro League, if people remember back then, over Astralis, right? Obviously, Rejin, let's just get out of the way at the beginning. Since at the moment you are the coach of TSM and everyone's flaming TSM and no one really knows what's going on with the project. And I think people thought the initial lineup, the one that actually is mostly changed now, was a bit underwhelming. Right, first things first. So obviously the reason you haven't been around for a while as a coach is with all that coaching bug thing, which now feels like a lifetime ago, but it was only 3 years ago. Everyone must remember that if anyone who had any instance of getting caught using that bug or having the bug happen and not reporting it, I always make that distinction, basically got like a ban from majors, if people don't know. Famously, Gary from Fury, who was a very good team at the time, couldn't actually be their coach at IEM Rio, that major. Famously, when FaZe Clan won the IEM Katowice one in 2022, Robin could not join them on stage because they'd all been used. So in your case, if people don't remember, you actually got, I think, the highest punishment of anyone, didn't you? Didn't you get something crazy, like 5 or 6 majors was your amount of bid? But it runs out on this one, right? This Copenhagen major, it runs out, right?
Yeah, well, I actually got permanently banned from the beginning, right? Like, so I was never allowed to go.
Oh, and it was reduced back after, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Then, but then I had I was always cooperating 100% with the ISIC there, and we were talking back and forth with Valve. And then in the end, they decided to say, okay, let's give him another shot. And then I basically got half my sentence, and they say after the Copenhagen major, I'm free as a bird. Or how do you want to say it?
Yeah, okay. Just wanted to get that out of the way at the beginning. The other thing to say is, and also, by the way, if people don't understand, like, in the same way as if someone went to prison for a year, you can't forever be like, you're not allowed a job and you're scum. Like, when people have done their time, after that the whole premise of these prison system is like, you move on, they're allowed to start their life again and come back to, in this scenario, the ban's lifted, he can come and coach. So obviously now you coach TSM. Let's just ask a few brief questions to get out the way so people don't think we're avoiding it, right? As I said, Rachel, like, if I had to be blunt, I'd just say the old TSM lineup, I did a video, it wasn't good. The problem when they announced that initial lineup was, I made this point in the video, I actually thought, I didn't know the Modo guy, but every other player I know, like I know Valde, I know Inters, I know Jax, I know Cypher. The problem was you had a lot of players that like individually could be in a good team, but I felt like that mix didn't make any sense. Like when I saw it, for example, like where's the fragging, where's the star players, the IGL's even brand new. You've taken so many question marks. So obviously that was before you were involved. Since you've come in, people have seen most of those players have been cycled out and have gone from the lineup now. Was that actually something that you were involved with? Were they already going to go when you were being brought in? Give us some basic thoughts to begin with.
I think we have to go back actually to when they created the TSM roster, because we have to remember, like, the one who created the roster was Remy, XGQCC.
Oh yes, the former Vitality coach and the current Vitality coach. Yes.
Yeah.
So if I say Remy, that's the one I'm referring to.
Okay.
So he created the project, right? And he hired the players, picked the players and everything. Then he got this offer from Vitality, which of course you take, right?
Yeah, of course.
You'll be more or not to, right? And that kind of left the project standing, right? Because it was his project. Like he picked the players, so they were kind of left to their own demise in that case. And I don't think anyone really knew what the plan was. Like it was his plan, his idea, and it never really got realized, right? And you end up with this odd mixture of players, because when everyone saw it, it's like it looked like you just take a random bunch of players, put them in a bag, and you just drew 5 names, right?
Yes.
So I think that they got off in a very unlucky start, and it took a long time without anyone to kind of guide them or put them in the right direction. And when you have been playing together for nearly half a year, I think it was, without any guidance, anything, it's kind of meant to doom, right? Like the project doesn't work out. And it was Valde who was the in-game leader. He was also new to that role. So when I came in, basically I said to Valde that you need to take control of this team. Like, you need to tell me which players you want, which players you don't want, etc. That was something I learned from Kerrigan, like, and the way he builds his team. Like, he cannot lead a team if he doesn't believe in the players, or he needs to play different ways, right? That's what people are forgetting many times. Like, there is this thing called team dynamic, right? You have to function within the team, and you also have to have the fragging power and everything else like involved within, right? But if the in-game leader can't work with, say, player, well, you're gonna get nowhere, right? So we basically decided to just do a hard reboot in that case and build it up from scratch. And that meant we had to bench some players, right? So I say some players, basically everyone, right?
Yeah.
And that is nothing against. All of them are great individuals. Like one of them, I'm mostly sad that we couldn't keep was Inters. Like he is really smart and actually has a really high individual level. Once you push him and try to say, bro, come on, just go fuck them, right? And he will do that, right? And when I joined, his rating went up from, I can't remember, like something like 0.20 almost, like up in rating, right? Not saying it's my
Sure,
doing,
sure.
but I pushed him in the right direction, right? So that was actually a player I would like, but to be fair, like he has this, I would say CIS mentality, and it's not a negative thing. It's just the way they think and they want to play CS. Is so different compared to how we do it in Denmark. So when I come in and validate the in-game leader, we have kind of the same vision how we want to play,
Right.
and it just doesn't fit, right? And this really sucks because I really like Timo or Intas, and I really would like it to function, but like I said, that ship has kind of sailed when you lead them to their own demise for 6 months, right? You have to do a hard reboot and a hard refresh, right? So that was kind of the thing why we started replacing player after player. To be fair, it all started with the Bleed buying Cypher, right? And
True.
then it
Yes, true.
it kind of got the whole thing rolling, right? After we didn't made it to the major, of course. So yeah.
Yeah, just thought at the outset we'd ask, just because people are going to wonder these things and put in the comments anyway, so who cares? Right, let's do the actual episode now then. So obviously,
actually,
then.
I want to ask one question. Yeah. I wanted to ask it because I thought one thing that was interesting about Inters is that this is kind of like the hot take surrounding TSM I have, is that even though he was benched from TSM, I actually feel like his stock really rose despite the fact that he obviously was on a really strong Gambit roster and people were interested in him as a support player. I feel like people aren't really going to pin the blame for TSM's failures on Inters. Everybody knows that he's he can be a contributing member of a team that plays winning Counter-Strike. So I just wanted to ask actually, like, how's his English?
His English is actually surprisingly good. Like, there's nothing there at all. I didn't see that as a hindrance. So yeah, his English is fine. Like, but I think he would need a year or two if he wants to go international to be able to play the kind of system we do in international team stuff like that. Because you have to be like when you have an international roster, you have to make your own decision. You have to be proactive yourself, and you cannot just sit back in a system where everyone knows exactly what's going to happen, right? Like they did in the old Gambit days and stuff like that, right? So I think that's the main issue, so to say, quote unquote. But he's an amazing guy and really he's working so hard. First on the server, last to leave. And like I have nothing but praises for him, and it really sucks that we couldn't make it work with him. That's my honest opinion. This is not me saying some bullshit there, right? It's this really what I feel about him.
Okay, right. What is your first good point then, Rejin?
My good point was, let me see here.
It was pretty vague, so you're going to have to give me some examples for it. You said a lot of new and good solid teams. So give me some like more specific examples. That's a bit broad, obviously.
Yeah. Well, I think like CS2 has brought up a lot of new teams, of course, and talent. Like because of the it's not CS:GO anymore. You can wide swing. You're not doing the same things that you did in CS:GO, right? And I love there's so many good teams. Like I think Ecstatic is one of the best examples on that. They play some really solid CS. They are really hard to counter when you play them, and it's just really nice to see that they are doing so well. I think there's so many teams where it's not the biggest team, right? Like FaZe, it's not the FaZes or Astralis, I was about to say, etc. It's like these new upcomers. I just really love to see these young guys coming up and taking over. I think Dunk is the prime example, like Dunk, Suntix, these guys, right, coming up and really dominating the scene. I love it because it's a fresh way of playing CS. It's not the ABC of CS, so to say. There is raw force mixed with some genius plays here and there. I just love it so much, and I think it makes every tournament so much more fun to watch. If you love CS, of course, if you want it for the broader audience, it's always better to have the biggest names go through, right?
What do you think, Maui?
that was going to be my kind of counterpoint to this. Is that I think if people share your opinion, Rejin, then I don't think we have anything to worry about in 2025 when we dissolve the partner leagues, franchise leagues that are in place right now. And that's kind of my worry moving forward, is that the viewership numbers will decline because there are so many good teams right now. The floor of tier 2 teams is so high now that when they enter these kinds of tournaments, you really have no idea who's going to be coming out on top. I'm always every event seemingly nowadays, there's always some plucky underdog that shows up to an RMR or a major, or I mean not a major. Well, actually, yeah, you can include the majors, but I was thinking more like a Katowice or something, and then they just punch above their weight, and you just are kind of wondering, unless you're really following the tier 2 scene really deeply, you're probably wondering, how is this even happening? And even when you follow the tier 2 scene pretty deeply, you sometimes still see those teams pop up, and you're like, wait, how did they actually do that? Like, for example, the team that I saw at Katowice that surprised me, Rebels. Like, they just came out of nowhere. They took a map off of Cloud9, and I looked at some of their recent stuff before they played Cloud9. They had to swap out their best player. They barely beat 9 in a domestic tournament to even get to Katowice. And I was kind of like, there's no way they should be able to do this, but then they do. And it just feels like now the level of play amongst tier 2 is it's just so consistently strong nowadays that you can't really relax if you're any tier 1 teams. And my big worry for that is simply viewership and the business side of things. But in terms of getting to see the best Counter-Strike at any given day, well, hopefully we're getting that, because it does feel like everybody is now getting enough opportunities, and especially next year, they'll be getting enough opportunities that if you're playing really good CS, I think the roadmap is right there for you to find some slot into some tier 1 event.
My problem with this topic is this. I want to ask you a follow-up question, Rejin. When you say there's a lot of good teams, are you just counting teams like Ecstatic was an example you gave? Are you counting teams that are newer, as in some of the players we haven't seen at the top level, and the ones that specifically like qualified to the major? Are you talking in general in the scene, like good teams coming up? Because obviously the angle I have here, which is what Maui started to address there, is when some people get upset that like these teams qualify, or more importantly, that the big team doesn't qualify, like Ecstatic qualifies instead of Astralis, right? My issue here is that we've got to have like gradations here. We're not just talking about like rando teams that are going to have this one win and never do anything. Assumably we mean teams that actually can like build off this and one day be like real tier 1 teams. It wouldn't be a surprise they make it one day. Is it in that vein you mean?
Yeah, 100%. And I think once we get to my ugly point, it makes also more sense, I would say.
Yes. Any format stuff will come later, guys. So we're not talking about like the way that we're talking about the idea they qualified. You're just saying it's good if once you take the aspect out, right?
Yeah, because for me, I look at it from a perspective of a person who has been playing CS since, like, my first event was in 2000. That was my first LAN event, right? A local Danish LAN event, right? And I just love CS. I just love when people are good at their craft. Like, it can actually be any sport, right? Like, if people are good at something, I like to watch it, right? And that's the same with these guys here. When I see these coming up, when I look at the players, when I look at players for TSM, who would we like on our team? There's so many to choose from, right? Because they all have these individual things where they're doing it great. And then there's like the team aspect of it where you have like the ecstatic. That's why I like to use the example, because if you look at those players, they don't have a dunk or someone where you like look at it, oh, that is the new simple or something like that, right? Where you look at other teams, they have this, like, for example, you can take a team like the Ikle guys who sadly went under now and did in a more, right? There was this guy called Kvem, right? He's really good, but there's like one guy on a team where you have the individuals who's really nice and really good at playing CS, and then you have the teams who don't necessarily have the individuals, but are just playing really solid CS. And it's like you said before with Rebels, right? They don't necessarily have the individuals, but they just have a really good fundamental system, right? And that shows me also that you cannot just go out and buy things and get like the best you want, right? Because you need the dynamics, you need the team play, everything else go hand in hand, right? So for me as a CS enjoyer, it's really nice to see so many teams coming up and doing well, and also showing some great CS.
Like, what I would say is that's why I asked that follow-up question. Because if we're talking about teams where, assuming when you mean like newer teams, you do also mean like some of the newer players. So for example, like for example, here's how I would divide the two groups of teams. It's going to be different from yours because you've already put ecstatic in there. I don't give a fuck about ecstatic. So, spoiler, Danish bias. Then it's okay. It's all good. You can be friends with them. I don't have to be. I'm not Danish. I can say what I want. So, if we make the division like this, I think of teams like the heroic lineup. Everyone thought that would be like rejects, and so obviously he's been way better than people thought they would. No one going to give a fuck when they were 9. Game of Legion has continued on despite losing their IGL. Fucking Monty actually is pretty good, even though they bombed out of this RMR. Eternal Fire, that one's a bit of a stretch because we do know those players, but to be fair, as a team, they were never this good. Even Bet-Boom has some decent players. Then they have a core that could do. These teams I'm into. Like, if this team gets like an upset, that might not even be in the long term an upset. Some of these teams might actually be better than a bigger named lineup that doesn't work. My problem is the next group of teams, which is where I think a lot of the vitriol comes from. And I don't care that loads of these teams have qualified. That's my problem. Like Koi, Guild Eagles, Amcal, Saw. The point is, I don't give a fuck about these teams. Like, well done, you won this one here. I'm going to put a lot of that, I will say, on the other team that lost. But the point is, I'm not blaming you because they lost. You won the game. In fact, it's good that you beat them because you punish teams that have something flawed about them. Unless, obviously, again, we're putting out of the case of, like, if you got a bullshit Swiss draw or MR12, you got lucky. We're assuming these are straight-up matches where you just outplayed them and they played badly, so they didn't set the bar and you were above them. That's all cool. My problem is, though, what I don't like, which is why I punish the big team like an Astralis if they fail in that scenario, is Amcal isn't gonna, they don't even have a chance to win the major. It's not even a dream. Like, nothing could ever happen where they could win this major. And by the way, I'm not at all worried that this is now going to be fit. This isn't like Team Spirit where they had like Donk and Shiro and players that were bangers. Like, there's no player in there is going to do what Donk did. So my problem with those teams is a lot of those teams, if you notice, even some of those, I'm not even being unfair to the players, some of them are doing nationality-based things. Like, if your whole thing's with Portuguese, it's going to be pretty hard for you to make it in the long run. Like, how many Donks are coming from Portugal, you know? So my problem is more just that. But if you notice, I think I've, over the years, this is where I wouldn't say I've mellowed, I've just found a better way to phrase it and be more eloquent. Because when I noticed that fans get really upset when you say like, oh, I wish that upset hadn't happened, they think you're blaming Saw for like outplaying some team that you wanted. No. Saw did, I mean, arguably more than their job. They did better than I expected. My problem is always just, for the sake of wanting to see the rest of the tournament be awesome, like that's why I said Amcal's not going to win the major. The problem is if they even make top 8, I don't think they're going to go further. So I'd rather see a team that could win from there. Even if it was someone silly like Falcons, they'd have a better chance in a quarterfinal, in my opinion, in a big stage. And there's the last thing as well that you have to throw in that people always ignore. I get why it's dope if you are Guild Eagles and you qualify to these majors and nothing's going on elsewhere, but each time you come along and suddenly you're in the major. The problem is this. The major isn't the same setting as the qualifier. So you might have won in the tournament area of a qualifier, but when you go to that stage and it's like, welcome to the quarterfinals of the World Championship, you're going to fucking crumble in a way that like Falcons probably wouldn't. You might actually be better than them in this tournament area, but the point is we all get it. I mean, isn't FaZe Clan 2022 the best example? There's plenty of teams could give them a great game or even beat them in the group stage. But if you got them in the final, there's not many teams could ever win. Like they were such veterans, it was so good on stage. So I'll just say that if people get all their feelings hurt, part of me does want the best teams to make it, but if they don't make it, it is their fault. Unless, we'll get to it later, there are format issues, which obviously, spoiler, that will always, every RMR ever, guys, until it's perfect, we're all going to complain about it. It's all good. So there we go. I don't think it's much more than that. That's a pretty good point. Right, Maui, what is your good point?
Mine is it's kind of like a broad topic of MOUZ. I kind of wanted to first give credit to Shuhei, but then I really started looking more at MOUZ and what makes them tick and what makes them such a strong and consistent team. And it's really, to me, actually more or less the rifle trio that they have, and actually it's all 4 of them and how versatile they are. Like, they're so willing. So I'm talking about, say, Shuhei, Exertion, Brolin, and Yimpat. And I mean, they're not all super versatile. Like, they're going to swap roles and positions every single round. But in the middle of a round, it's very clear that most of them have enough game sense that they can handle different stages of the round very well. And I'm very, I feel like MOUZ is one of those teams where you do one of those things with the eye test where you see like, you know, with certain teams, like I'll just pick on Astralis just because they were in my head. Like, if you saw like Borup and Buzz in a 2v4, you just know the round's over. Like, you're done. You're really done watching. But I'd see MOUZ actually with practically any of their players in a 2v4, and actually I'm like, let me keep watching, you know, let me make sure that they're actually going to lose this one, or like they don't have a chance to bring it back. Because I mean, literally they won a 2v4 against Spirit with like Torzi being one of the players, and I think Shuhei was another one. So like, they can do it with practically any of their players, beating top teams like that. And I think what I think what a lot of us are drawn to right now, that I kind of want to change the narrative a little bit, is that I think a lot of people are like, the masterminding of Shuhei is what's making this MOUZ team as strong as they are. And I actually don't think that's necessarily the entire story. I do think that Shuhei is a great in-game leader. I think he's one for the future, probably going to stay one of the top 5 IGLs for a couple years to come. But I think that Yimpat has just been such a phenomenal anchor for them. Like, his mechanical ability is so strong that he takes enough risks, even as, say, a B-side anchor on Mirage. Like, he'll push to try to find win conditions for his team. So I think that he's incredibly strong. And I think that Brolin, who has been dealt such a bad hand for years consecutively, now finally has a home for a team that, I mean, he went roll for roll with Frozen, and he's playing some of the best CS we've seen him play for 3 years. So I just wanted to kind of like open it up a little bit, that this MOUZ team is incredibly good. And of course, I have to make it a little extra, a little spicy. They're doing it with probably the worst AWPer of any team in the top 10. So like Torzy, compared to practically, you just go down the list of all these HLTV top 10 teams, and I think the only AWPer that you would say is obviously worse than him is, well, Cloud9. They don't have an AWPer. And then you would maybe say like Hades has been recency. Okay. Like he's been very good, but over the course of time, I would have probably taken Torzy over Hades. But every other AWPer in the top 8 of HLTV ranked teams, I would say I would take them over Torzy.
Where are you at on this, Rejin?
I mean, I'm not really agreeing with the Torzy thing, but that's another debate. But I think,
who would you take Torzy over any team that's ranked in the top 8 on HLTV?
Who's the ranked top 8?
So
You can take versatility, of course.
Brokey, Zywoo, Shiro.
So
Monarchy,
let me start with Brokey, right? Because
okay.
Brokey is such a different AWPer than almost any other AWPer, because he's so passive, right? No, my point, like, he's not like the hyper aggressive AWPer and does these crazy peaks like Torzy does, right? So I could easily see Torzy in phase instead of Brokey, because Kerrigan knows how to use him. It's the same with Voxy, right? So and he's really good, Torzy, in making these insane flicks and kills and stuff like that, right? So it's about how you use them, I think. So I think you cannot really compare it 1-to-1. I don't think that would be a fair assessment, in my opinion, at least. So like, just if you take phase, you could easily put Torzy in, and it will probably be the same caliber of phase you would get, in my opinion. But to go back to the MOUZ area there, I think what MOUZ have, they are loving to play Counter-Strike. They have so much fun. Look at them on the stage and on when they're playing. That is the number one reason why, like you said yourself, Maui, any situation they can win, because they believe in it, they have fun, they enjoy each other, and you see a guy like Brolin finally smiling. Oh, like, that guy is not smiling much, but like, he's enjoying himself. He's playing CS like way he wants to play, right? And I think that is the number one reason why MOUZ are doing so phenomenal well right now. And I think a lot of that comes back to, and it's not because he's Danish, but their coach and the way they do things in MOUZ. Like, I know how they do things in MOUZ in the background, and they focus a lot on this environment and team dynamics and stuff like that. I think actually credit goes to Kerrigan there, because like, he was there, showed them how it's done, how you get a great team dynamics, and they carried that along. You can see how much they're enjoying, even when they're losing. They're not like sitting there and just like one-on-one. Like, they're just they're just like helping each other, supporting each other, and are always there. I think that's the number one reason why they're so consistent, besides their firepower, everything.
Yeah, the problem with this topic, I think, is I'm actually going to sort of take a position between the two positions. Like, I definitely don't think it's just the Shuhei guy. I know what Maui means by that. Basically, the joke is, this is why, if we get to it later, the whole Glaive topic is so idiotic, because people went from like, he's the GOAT, to like the second they got results that looked to like, he's washed and he was never the GOAT and it was fake. It's like, listen, that's like the stupidest possible contrarian position. Like, even the contrarian position would be, I just personally didn't think he was the GOAT, and maybe, there was more to Astralis than we thought. But you could never say he was bad, or he's fucking like he was a fraud or something. So that angle was stupid as fuck. But my point is, yeah, they try to do the same thing here, where what they're trying to make it is, if they've had all this like level up in results since they got Shuhei, it's all him. It's just him joining. I mean, remember, the problem here is he came off the most ridiculous small sample size Gamer Legion run where he beat Heroic and went to the final of the Major. So if he did that and people didn't rate a lot of those players, and now they obviously don't give a fuck about him, they're obviously going to think it was him, he was a genius, and then he came back to MOUZ. They were immediately really fucking good. They won the Pro League. So I can see why the story very simplistically would be, it's just the Shuhei guy. Before that, MOUZ was just whatever. But it's like there's a bunch of angles where essentially if you look at the roster, I actually think it's really unfair to go one way too far the other, to either say it's not him, it's just the players are dope, or to be like, it's just him, and like essentially, I'd give the analogy here, they obviously must be contrasting with Dexter and be like, Dexter was a bomb and Shui's the king. Here's why it can't be that if you look at the 4 players that he's got. So first of all, Exertion already was in the team before him and looked really good. So I don't know what he's done to Exertion. He's just looking anyway. Then you had the Yimfat guy, basically was good from tournament 1, so there's not even time for necessarily to have worked with him. That guy just clear. If you see the way that guy's mentality works and how it actually manifests in his game, where he has that like crazy nerves and he can just like hold his nerve in any scenario, and he just seems like he mentally resets between each kill. That's just him, bro. No, there's nothing Shuhei to. So 2 of the members, I'm not going to give you credit for that, guys. You can't tell me he made those guys great. But then the other 2, I'm almost certain he was involved with. So Torji, people remember he himself did the interview where he said, I liked it when Shuhei sort of microed me, whereas Dexter gives me too much freedom. Now, what's funny is if you watched my reflections with Frozen, he himself initially got mad at that narrative that fans were saying it and saying like, they're making it sound like, Torshi hasn't got a brain and he does it. But then the joke is, he himself later explained that when JDC, who used to be in their team as the support player and obviously was in MOUZ NXT, was telling them, we got to get Shuhei back, he said that what JDC's selling point was, you want to see how much he's going to help Torshi, mate? He's going to be awesome. So the joke is he almost accidentally backed into explaining that there's even more circumstantial evidence that might be a real thing. Now, look, he doesn't make Torji hit the shots, but I can imagine some input might help. Whereas, this region, there's some AWPers want you to tell him everything, some want you to tell him fucking nothing. The difference between the 2 can be really big. And obviously, in Dexter's case, maybe because he's a fragger himself, he thought that's an AWPer who wants all the freedom, but maybe they don't. Maybe they want you to tell him where they want you to be and what you're going to do. So I'd say already, you see, I've divided the roster. There's like 2 I can see is him. I haven't done the other one. The other one's Brolan. Now, here's why I can easily say I think he had something to do with Brolan being good, because I've had a theory about Brolan in NIP and the end of Fnatic the whole time, and all I'll say is I can't say who it's with, but I've got an interview coming out soon that I think confirms this as well. Basically, here's why I think Brolan was bad in NIP. It had nothing to do with speaking English. That really was just code for get Smoothie the fuck out. The joke there was I had problems with the English, not English. The real issue he had in NIP goes like this: everyone else in the team was a bigger personality, ego, and not name, but bigger personality and ego. So the problem in that team you had was, if you know Swedes in general, they are by definition non-confrontational. The ones that aren't, the joke is the people like Makaleli, and they get kicked out the scene immediately because everyone else is non-confrontational. So they just sort of slowly soft blacklist you out. So in Brolan's case, as far as I know, his problem was, since he had all these other names like Rez, Config, who were similar sorts of role and player, he was just being too passive and he was letting them take spots and roles. If he could have, what he should have sort of done is be a bit of a dick, like fucking a simple would, and just be like, look, bro, Config, you were really good a few years ago. Rez, you were good in like fucking 27. Like, can I have these spots? Like, I will actually carry, but he's not that sort of player. It's like JKS, if people know, he's had the same exact problem. If you get a team, and this is what I'm now going to say about Shuhei, where they look at you and they assess you and they go, hey, wait a minute, actually in this Renegades, I would make JKS my star and give him all these spots. Then he can be a star. But if you put him in a complexity and there's all these other big names and everyone goes, hey, what roles are we doing? He's just going to quietly sit in the back and then he'll get whatever's left. He'll draw the shortest straw. So I think Brolan and Nip drew the shortest straw. And his personality was he just went along with it. He was actually probably trying to be a good teammate by doing that. Probably thought because he's Swedish, it'd be rude to be, the fucking law of Janty. You can't just come out like, hey guys, I'm the shit. Like, do everything I want. Like, that's literally the opposite. It's the antithesis of their culture, if you don't know, guys, in the Nordic region. So I actually think what will have happened is, I think Shuhei saw intelligently, I've got a functional team, but I've just lost my star rifler. The Brolan guy was dope years ago and still young and got all the skill. Why don't I just make him my star? And what do you know? Literally immediately, he's just fragging. And then lastly, here's the part though, that in a way, some of it must be Shuhei, but it all can't be, is bro, the one thing that people have underrated about this team is the fucking fragging. If you go and look at the lineup, guys, and put LAN last 6 months, all of them except fucking Shuhei are above a 1.12 rating. All 4 of them. All 4 players. That is the fucking dream. But I'll tell you what, though, if you are a mastermind, that's also the dream fucking team. You've got all the weapons. You got all the pieces. So I think it's a bit of both. I do think, actually, Shuhei is actually like, deserving a little bit of the master. But it's weird. I'd just say I'm putting him in that archetype at the moment. He hasn't earned it yet, but he's getting into that archetype. I've seen him work with 2 completely different rosters and do really good things with them. So now I'm starting to think that. But I do think people are probably going to go too far. Like, even when people, if you notice, that's why I always used to say I wanted Snappy to join G2. I didn't want Shuhei because I don't know what would happen if you put him in a room with Nico. I don't know what happens if he has all the biggest. I don't know what happens if they tell you if you don't win all the next events, you're a failure. I think actually he's in the perfect team for him because in that conversation earlier, they're like a level above what MOUZ was. They're starting to contend, but also it's not like you look at their team and they have like fucking device and you go, you're failure. Why aren't you in the mid? It's like, no, actually, this is almost like the perfect set of tools and scenario where the point is, this is the year, like Maui says, this is when you'll find out if he's actually like going to be an elite IGL. And then, you know what, maybe a year from now, they get a bigger name, or he does go to a Vitality, or then maybe it's time for him to be on the biggest teams in the world and be the best IGL. So I think it's a cool topic. I agree. I don't think there's anything negative about MOUZ, but I think they've killed it. Like, what a fucking amazing roster construction. That if it's the Cyclone guy, he gets full marks. If it's someone at MOUZ, full marks. If it's Shuhei, who knows? But whoever did it, this is a great roster. Very well. Especially also if you know the economics. They're fucking min-maxed like geniuses. Like, I don't think you could get better players for the money they have to spend, quite frankly.
To lean even heavier into just the narrative side of it, I really think that it benefits these players to be on an org like MOUZ, where you don't have like literally just imagine these 5 players and Cyclone as the coach, and the org is G2. The fan uproar if you're losing is much greater,
yes.
and it's going to get into your head so much more.
Yes.
But MOUZ is just a team consistently that's just like, if they can punch up, then it always feels like MOUZ is punching up, even when they are one of the best teams in the world,
yes.
and that just somehow helps their mentality, and it kind of plays into the whole they're having fun with each other thing. And yeah, back to Cyclone really quick, one quick point. In the game against Spirit, it was pretty obvious that they had done a significant amount of anti-stratting for Donk and for Spirit in general. And even in the post-game interview, Shuhei did mention the fact that Cyclone really played a big part in making sure that they could neutralize Donk, and they did.
Okay. Right, it's my good point now. My good point, it's actually quite simple. It's just one word. It's just Glaive. That's it. It's just Glaive. Because here's the problem. I could do like Ents as a team. No, because here's the thing. Like, I'm not going to get like... I'm sorry, guys. I don't think Goofy's going to be like top 10 in fucking HLTV, top 20 at the end of the year. It's not even on the table, is it? So it's not like I'm not actually that hyped about Ents the team. Like, look, at the moment, I actually think part of why they're having these results and the uptick is they're also, if you notice, the teams they're beating, they're taking advantage of the teams that are a mess and the rosters that haven't got it together and the teams that actually, like, you know, they haven't even figured out the roles. That's the teams that they're bashing at the moment. But it's actually specifically the notion that Glaive is back to relevancy. Because I also do think, by the way, picking up on that conversation from MOUZ, this is actually exactly the sort of team that should have gambled on Glaive. I know they obviously initially gambled when they had the old Ents core of like Sun Pius and Madden, and they thought, you know, we'd actually be contenders again. But actually, I think this level is way fairer, because the problem is this. Again, I would never dismiss an IGL like that, even after those bad periods in Astralis, because first of all, some of those lineups were scuffed. Like, as you just said, like, fucking Borup was in there, mate. Like, Borup was good. The joke is, like, back when Rejin joined MOUZ, like, 4 years ago or something, like, if people don't know, he was even going to be a star once upon, that was so many years ago now. He's not even that player anymore, and they never even tried to. They gave him all the shitter roles. So if you looked at that era, yeah, I don't expect you with Boz to like be in the semis of the major. I don't think that's even a reasonable expectation. But at the same time, when you did have people like Blame F and Device were really fucking good players, sometimes the results weren't quite where you'd hope they'd be. You'd think that'd be enough to get the odd upset, wouldn't you, and get a few placings. So I did think it was actually justified that they kicked him from Astralis. But here's why I actually like where he's at and what's happened since. I actually think it's very fair that a smaller org like Ents gambled, and then now they've had to double gamble by giving him the Polish, like, not like proper pieces. That was like a team where, if you know financially and what their options were, that was like a good gamble for both parties. If it worked for him like it has, he gets to revive his career, and also because you're not getting the best players, you get to show it's still me. I must be doing some of this shit. Like, I can say, who the fuck even was a fan of Kyler and Goofy outside of Poland before? No one. You all are now, because you're suddenly, hey, just heard these guys got some game. It's like, bro, we were all loving when he got fired from Ents like 2 years ago. We all said it was brilliant. How are you saying now he's dope? Like, but it's cause now they actually have a functional system, proper coaching, and a fucking IGL. So the key thing is this, Rejin. I think it would have actually been a travesty, even though this will be a very poorly received comment in the professional community. I actually hate it when big orgs like a G2 or a FaZe Clan like gamble on the really old IGL who was awesome, because essentially like it's their mate or someone they used to play. So if you don't know, it is true that back in the day, people like Nico and FaZe Clan were trying to recruit like exist, put in like 2018. Fucking, they obviously did recruit Neo in like 2019. Fucking Adren. That one was so egregious. It was. By the way, he doesn't even have dope English. He has like all right broken English. Like those ones are like, mate, are you actually recruiting out of a yearbook here from like the past? Like you recruit people. So the point is, when you do that, I'm not a big fan of it, right? Because it doesn't work out very often. You are just recruiting for nostalgic purposes. And I think actually it would have been a travesty if someone like G2 would kick Tuxie, no matter what I think about him, and just be like, yeah, Glaive, like I remember years ago you win a major, so like, yeah, you just have to have all the best players in the world and just cut join. Because in that scenario, like actually at that point in his career, no one, here's the other thing. When your career goes down, an obvious assumption to make is maybe your motivation has gone. Do you still have the drive to win? You've won everything. These are all very human, obvious questions to ask. So the key thing about Ents to me is it's a perfect example of a project where if he'd have failed, it wouldn't mean he was a fraud all along. He doesn't have the Astralis players, but it was a chance to do something. And I think he's done more than that, quite frankly, which is why it's dope. So now the best part, if you can see all the points I'm making together, is you actually can know that it's Glaive doing this. You can know that Glaive is actually back and he is fucking motivated because he doesn't have Nico Montesino. If he'd have had those players and he really was like, Montesino go kill, then we wouldn't know if it was Glaive. So I actually love the fact that this, I can tell from just these matches I've seen since he took over Ents, even that first one where they came back after the initial results of the S2 Masters and they were making a little run with the Ents. I can tell it shows Glaives is still there. He isn't checked out. He's not doing it just for the check. He's not doing it fucking cynically. He actually clearly cares and he's back. And I tell you what, in a world where there's a lot of good teams don't have a top IGL and definitely not legendary ones, we need all the legends we can get. I always say this, don't ever bury a legendary player until you know they are 100% done. And this guy isn't done, mate. So there you go. I'll throw it open to you guys. What do you think? Glaive's back.
Yeah, I think I think he said it really well on, I think it was the post-match Astralis game in the interview with Banks, where he said, you just know that he's into it, because he said like, well, I know they like to play this 2-2-1 system or 2-3 system, and we just throw in a Rush B in this key round, right? And it was such a Glaive call. I think it was 11-9, or I can't remember the score, but it was like a key round where Astralis would be broken, like economy-wise, and it's like, they basically gambled the match there, or not the whole match, but like, you know what point, right? And that was such a Glaive call. So for me, it definitely tells me he was back. But I think we also have to give credit to Jakub Kuben, what he has done.
Sure.
Like you see the last few teams he's had, like Mad Lions, and then Apex as well,
Yep.
got them to the RMRs, got them to the Major, and not only get them to the Major, but actually pretty far in the Major, make these roles work. Now I had the pleasure working with him in Mad Lions. And he's such a nice guy to work with, and he's really, well, he's a legend, right? And he won a lot of tournaments himself, so he knows what it takes. So I think these things combined really help Glaive, and I think also like the motivation factor that it was Astralis they're playing, right? So I mean, it must give a little more kick in the ass, right? So for me, yeah, sure, like such a good point to be made for sure.
Statistically, Glaive and Ents in practically everything they've played, well, just the RMR and Katowice itself, their T sides were better than their CT sides. So that's one thing to give Glaive some credit. And actually, in fact, their CT sides, some of them weren't even that good. Like they were like 44%, and they're winning off the back of really well called T sides. But there were moments beyond just, yeah, the rush call was one that I remember for sure. But there were also some late round moments I remember where on Ancient in particular, there was just ways that some of the Ents players played out rounds, which I would never have imagined that they would have played it like that had it been on 9. Because I remember on 9, what their strengths was that they had all these tricks, and they just kept going into tricks and tricks and tricks and tricks, but they didn't necessarily seem to always be in tune with late round timings. And I feel like now that Glaive's on the team, their mid-rounding in late rounds is especially strong, where, for example, if one guy's selling a fake on one side of the map, they really kind of push it late to try to sell it, as opposed to on like when some of these core players like Kyler, Goofy, and Hades were on 9, it just kind of felt like we're just going to try to execute very strongly in every single circumstance that we can. And now they've got this other dimension to them that I think I would have to assume Glaive is what he's bringing that to the table. He knows how to micro people in a mid-late round situation to one, confuse the defense, and two, just maximize the strengths of his players. So I've been really pleasantly surprised with this, because the key narrative point that I was hoping that Glaive would disprove was, is he just coming back for a check? Because when he was first playing with the core of Ents, the old Ents with like Nerds and Deha, Sun Pius Modern, and they just didn't connect at all. Their T sides were horrible. Like, they looked really bad. I was going on the desk at the World Finals talking about how bad they looked, and Glaive actually approached me after that. Was like, hey, I'm trying to incorporate their system and my system, and it's like mostly their system at this point. Well, I'm glad that he's proven that his system it needed time, because it clearly has elevated these players. And now, I'm not really gonna say Ents is some championship contending roster right now, but the fact that they too are making the players seem much more capable than what their previous roster showed, that's a huge boon to the space. And I'm just glad that Legends, for example, like, continuity seems so hard to find right now, moving from CSGO to CS2. So all in all, just really happy that a true GOAT, the GOAT IGL of CSGO is making a stand in CS2.
And by the way, I won't even bother. It's not even worthy of a point, so I didn't include it as a point. But the people who now, because remember, there's a sort of person, let's be real, it's young people who are inexperienced with life. And if they're male, I'll just say they've got that confidence that you want from a young person, but they misapply it to the very tiny bit of knowledge they have, and they imagine they know everything. So there's a type of person where there's only allowed to be one person who did everything in every team. So if it wasn't Glaive, then when Zonic won with Vitality in the Blast Paris, it was Zonic the whole time, wasn't it? But the joke is, now that Zonic didn't qualify with Falcons and Glaive did, now it was Glaive all along and Zonic was a bomb. Like, guys, you're the fraud. Understand this. I know you're hunting for the fraud, because there has to be a fraud. There is a fraud. There's the calls coming from inside the house. You're the fraud. You're the one who doesn't understand Astralis and Majors. Zonic and Glaive, they're fucking dope. They're some of the best ever at their role. Even if you don't think they're number one, the joke is they're like number 3 at best, aren't they? At worst, for fuck's sake. So that angle of who was the fraud? Spoiler, in the greatest lineup of all time, there were no frauds. That's why they were the greatest. If you want to find frauds, I'll show you teams that could have been the greatest and one player couldn't make it work, or some coach did fuck it up, or the IGL made the bad. The point is, in the GOAT lineup, we're not asking who's the fraud. What we're trying to figure out is who did what, and maybe who had more. Like, did Zonic have more to do with how the practice scrims run? Did Glaive make the mid-round call? Was it Device who made that call to rotate, or did he do it all himself? That's the fun conversations. But at the end, I hope we're not all coming to the conclusion, this guy's the fraud. Get him! Get the pitchforks! Get him out of CS! Like, these are the best people we've ever had in CS, you idiots, including Zonic and Snappy and all those fucking guys. Snake and Banter is brought to you in association with eSportsBet, the industry's leading crypto odds matrix. They are running right now a promotion that I'm going to show you. Go to the promotion section here. That is exclusive for the fans of LFN, where it's a deposit and receive 200% bonus to the maximum of 200 USDT. You can go and collect it here. You click onto this one here. Basically, you make sure you select the right thing and apply and all the rest of it. It works like this. It's a 200% first deposit bonus capped at 200 USDT or equivalent. Minimum deposit is 10 USDT or equivalent cryptocurrencies. Go sign up at eSportsBet for more details, and obviously feel free to contact customer support if you have any questions or queries about how this works. They'll explain it all and guide you through the process. Get more from your crypto with eSportsBet. Right, what is your bad point, Rejin?
Well, my bad point is going to be a little bit controversial.
It's good, I like it.
This is also, I think it's a secret amongst teams that is not being brought up really. And I wrote email to Valve about fixing this, because it's such a big problem. Like, a
lot of people don't know this thing, by the way, about the way it works. So explain what the situation that's changed in CS2 is from a CSGO game.
So when you were playing a CSGO and you were practicing and you were recording a demo, you could
POV demo.
You could watch your POV demo, right? But you could not see what the enemy was doing. So that thing were blocked or whatever. I don't know. I don't know how it works. Yeah. So you could only see your own POV, right? So that was also useful in some situations where it could be like, oh, we failed a flash here, or you throw this flash wrong, or whatever it might be, right? But now in CS2, when you have these programs, Noesis, Edge, Skybox, whatever they're called, everything, right? You can literally take a POV demo from a player, upload it, and see the whole fucking map.
If people don't know, the reason why this works is it even used to be a thing in back at 1.6. People made a program that could do the same thing because it has the data from your POV. Or see, it could sort of it could sort of like recreate that position. The difference was though, only movie makers used this thing back in the day I'm talking about. Like you're saying in CS2, as far as I know, basically it lets you're not just guessing from your POV, you can now get extra information that wasn't available, right?
You see the whole game as it was in a GoTV demo,
Yes.
after the official was played.
The joke is, it's actually what Valens did say. He wanted, guys, that everyone would be allowed to record HLTV demos. That we'd all be able to see all the POV. Essentially, that's what the case is. So if you do a scrim, everyone has all the info, basically, right?
Yeah. And not only that, they have all the info down to a set pos, meaning that you can write a console get pos, meaning you get the lineup of the grenade, where you're standing, everything. Like, so that means all these pocket plays, not many people know this, but I was pretty famous in MOUZ, at least amongst players, that I came up with a lot of pocket things that we practiced in CSGO, and it worked because people didn't know how to handle it, right? Or where it came from, or whatever it might be, right?
Sure.
Now it's just like you can't do anything without anyone knowing. So we're literally sitting here, like with my roster now, should we use this in practice or not? Because are people watching it or not? You know what I mean? So we don't want to give away these new things we found because it's potentially so meta-defining.
Right.
But at the same time, we need to practice it, if it makes sense, right? So it's so bad, in my opinion, that you can do this, and it's almost to the point of being ugly, right? Like, and I really, really hope it gets fixed somehow. I don't know how it works or anything. I'm not an expert in that. I just know that it can be done, and it is being done, right? I just think it ruins a bit of the charm. Like, let's see what they bring to the table, right? Oh, we already know because we already practiced them. See, you know what I mean? Like, you can't really bring these pocket strikes anymore, which I think is a shame. And it's just really bad. Like, you can see rotations and everything, how they react, and yeah. I know you can do that as well from officials, but the things where it's different from officials to practice is that you're trying out new things. You're focusing on things, and when you focus on things, you get an understanding on how people are reacting in certain scenarios. Like, it could be a nuke match, right? How like you can literally see after what did the team focus on. Like, they focused on rotation through vents, or they focused on rotation starting secret, or whatever it might be. And then suddenly you have all this data on a very specific area that you wouldn't have normally, because like it's something that happens like 1 out of 12 times, right, in an official game. So it's, from my point of view, it's really bad, and it hurts the whole practice. But I mean, it's not like anyone gets like a bigger advantage or not.
Everyone could use it.
Everyone can do it, right?
Sure.
So, but it's just a shame, I think, and that's why I think it's
okay.
That's pretty horrible, actually. Because there's the one argument for this is that it might level up the whole scene a little bit more. I don't really like this argument. I'm just like creating one just to.
It's the Valens argument. Basically, he thought like everyone should have access to the info, and then the idea is everyone studies it, and then whoever studies best wins. That's what he wanted, because he's a nerd. I get it.
Yeah, and that supposedly would level up the whole space, but actually, I don't really buy that, because I feel like if you're coming up with, say, pocket strats like you're saying, Rejin, then obviously I want to see, and when I want to watch Tier 1 Counter-Strike, I like seeing if there's a pocket strat like a rush or something like that would have 1 or 2 really good flashbangs and the perfect molly that covered the one blind spot they had in the round. I want to see those be run, and I want to see those have success. And if they don't, because people realize, oh, well, you know, if we change the molly timing that we throw already by half a second, well, this would just counter that pocket play as well. Well, you know, it's just something like that. Something that then it's like, well, now we just never get to see that play because people figured out that it wasn't that strong against one particular nade or whatever, or one particular setup. So I like seeing pro games where new stuff happens on the fly and people have to adapt and situations come out a little bit chaotic. I don't really mind that. I guess I don't see it from the Valence perspective of like, what, this is supposed to be good because then everybody's elevated because now we learn everybody's rotation. But the game, once the game becomes just anti-strats on counterplays, it doesn't really become the same whole, like, well-rounded game that's supposed to be the best Counter-Strike out there. It becomes there's so many layers and so much minutia that it becomes, in a way, like, it makes me as a viewer just question what's going on. It's like, wait, why would he even do that? And it's like, oh, because of an anti-strat idea. I just generally like seeing the most most well-rounded play possible, I would say, as opposed to the strict counterplay every single time because the teams know each other. Also, we just know for a fact that this is going to get so out of hand. As soon as people start sharing demos and it's like, oh, hey, you're going to scrim this team, someone's going to give somebody else a demo. And that we all know that's just going to happen. And that's just going to be a huge can of worms. It's just Pandora's box of just information.
I mean, like, I think I have some, like, I remember in MOUZ, we changed, like, I came up with this, sorry for glorying myself here, but I came with this idea that we moved the yard smokes on Nuke, right? And we were practicing these new yard smokes, and it was just dog shit for us for, like, the first week of scrims, right, in playing Nuke. Suddenly it just clicked and it made it work. And then we had this huge edge for a long time, especially against EG at that time. They just didn't know how to respond to the smokes because suddenly we could do 3 or 4 other things that you couldn't do before, and that is kind of losing its value because, like, if you can study it from a practice point of view, so it's not even a surprise anymore, right? It's just bad on bad things. Like the reason why we had this edge for like 2 or 3 months was because people tried to copy it, but they didn't know all the what's it called, the fallout groups, you know, like there's so many mistakes in it or that can happen, right? And we tried all these things in practice, but they didn't. So we could punish them using our things. And it's just sad that these things you have to worry about when you go into practice. Oh, maybe we should not do this now because then they're gonna cut, blah 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 blah. You know this drill, right? Yes. And I am so against with what Valen said. Like, I think it's the worst thing. Like, one thing is we have not out here with a new smoke lineup from blah blah blah, right? That's how it is, right? That's fair point. That's from official match. Everyone can see it. But still, you have to be like, okay, let's try it out. This new grenade we saw Kerrigan do, and then they have to practice it and then learn it, right? But if you can skip all that and do it in practice, like, where's the fun in that? Like there is nothing, right? Then it becomes, like you say, Mau, like counter and counter and counter, and then you adjust your molo half a bit or move it to the left or something like that, and then it counters completely what they're doing, right? So, yeah.
The problem with this topic, if you notice, is what Maui was trying to preempt and guess at is you're going to get a lot of, like, first of all, any topic like this where someone complains, there's a sort of reply guy who goes, well, no, actually, and they haven't even thought, they always say no, actually, to give themselves a time to really quickly think of a spurious argument. Like, they've already decided you're wrong and this has to be good because you've argued it, right? The problem with the people like that is they've never, ever been in a competitive environment. Before anyone goes, neither of you, I've known every fucking great player of all time, you fucking imbecile. I've even stood behind them and watched. I've even literally listened in French to fucking Existence Call and translated it. You don't know the shit I know, motherfucker. I don't even flex half of it. I just save it like this 20 years later to flex on your bitch. So basically, I do know what it's like, and I understand this point very, very shrewdly in esports history, because as Rejin says, this is not the way it ever was in Counter-Strike. And actually, the balance before, I think, was beautiful in Counter-Strike, because here's how it went. You could never get this info in a scrim. So you're all going to go, like, yeah, but you can just watch the official and get the line. No, he's talking about, like, times when you haven't even shown it in official yet. Like, this is what you worked on in the boot camp before you go to a Katowice, and you have this new flash or smoke that no one else knows, and it's got some unique element to it. And here's the thing, if you scrim them and he does it against you, you're going to know they have a new smoke, but as we say, you won't know the lineup. You can't see the POV and what he's lining, you can't see the pixel, you won't get, so essentially all the work he's talking about, where like the first time it didn't work and the second time it didn't work and the third time, and we keep tweaking it, and eventually we get that lineup, all that work we just put in practice, the second you see the demo, you get that for free. You now do the lineup and all that. We might put 10 hours in. We might have done 20 scrims of this. You get it immediately as long as you do the lineup, right? That's in itself fine once we're in the tournament. But by the way, if we're in a tournament like Allan, not just a random online game, you also don't have time to practice it right now. You could do it in your next scrim before the next game, but do you really have time? Are you going to mess around with an angle or a smoke you don't understand? Probably not. So actually, like he says, that advantage might last a whole tournament. So actually what we're doing is rewarding people for really good practice, guys. What we want them to do, we want want them to experiment in practice and try different things, not just try whatever the strongest meta thing is. If people don't know, like meta even stands for like, what is it, like most effective tactic available or something like. It's the idea that everyone copies the thing that's the best. We don't want that. We want people to explore the meta. And then the difference is in practice, that shit's all hidden, but then you do study. We all know that is what people, the coaches at events, study the demos at the event to try and pick some of these things out. And by the way, what's brilliant there is that means in the practice, the team doing it, their IGL and coaches getting a benefit from their work and experimentation. Then at the event, you're getting a benefit in the moment from the really fast coach who can pick something. Oh, this could be countered actually by this. He comes up with an idea on the fly. That he has extra value there. If instead you go back and you make it so the second one person does it once in one scrim, everyone gets it if they study. It doesn't even become Counter-Strike anymore. It just becomes like legal study, where if people don't know, one of the reasons why even if you have a case that's very strong, if you go against like Microsoft or Disney, here's why you will never win the case. Because they will hire 100 shit-hot lawyers who will look through every possible case, precedent, every angle. They'll be sat on drawing boards coming up with that. You'll have your one guy and he'll have a strong case in this one area and they'll come with a million things. And every time they bring one of those things up, if you know the law, that's how it works. Every time they bring a new thing, your dude didn't have time to study that yet and he has to go and study. And you've only got one human with one human's man hours, and they essentially, this is why they win all the cases, guys, can scale that infinitely. Now, if you can't see, this wouldn't actually do what Valence thinks. It would do the opposite. It wouldn't level up everyone like from the bottom by learning the system. It would just mean if you are FaZe Clan or G2, you do hire 10 analysts. Meanwhile, the guy who's in Ecstatic, he's just him still. He doesn't have 10 guys. And even if he has 10, he doesn't have the money to make his 10 like really shit hot analysts. He's going to have 10 guys from the community doing a little. So you can see the joke is it actually would actually make it less competitive in a way. And it wouldn't make it competitive in the way you want. It would just, like I say, it would take actually all the hard work. Would it be given an appropriate, in my opinion, here's what's fair about the current system. Once you show it, people have it, but they only have it when they've then put in the work to implement it themselves. They don't get it 1 second later. They get it. They can then start the process you did of figuring out how it works and testing it out. And then the idea is they then earn it. At that point, they've made it their tactic instead of just copying you. And I'll give people a very quick example. Because by the way, this was actually a thing that happened in 2020 as well. This is why you might remember Yanko had a dispute with LMBT, who was the coach of Forza at the time, because Forza was notorious in the pro scene of doing that thing where it looks like there's like a Go TV connected on the server and it's just fucking some guy and he's recording like oh no, you make it look, oh sorry, you do it the other way around. You make it look like the coach is just an extra coach is there, but that's a secret Go TV server renamed that just records the demo. And then they did this shit. They would have all your lineups. They would have all your positions. So spoiler, people behind the scenes told these guys, fucking we're not discriminating if you do that. Like stop that immediately. They would even check like the slots, get out the server, get the fucking thing out. They'd all make that excuse every time. No, it's just a mate of mine. He's just having a look in. They were like, get it out the server. And because these guys, Echo knows the game, mate. He knows what's going on with that shit. So that was considered really BM if you don't know, guys. This is like Valve's given everyone the ability to do that. Then the last thing I'll say goes like this. Two quick things. One is, people might not know this, but this experiment has already been run. If people might know, South Koreans, I know it's not a thing for Counter-Strike people, but if you know League of Legends or StarCraft, they are fucking unbelievable at studying. That's their biggest strength, is they'll study things, they'll put like insane out. It's why they're amazing at school as well, and mathematics and all this shit, right? And what happened was, when they started StarCraft in Korea, a little detail people won't know is, in the early years, they didn't have demos. They're called replayers in RTS. They didn't have replayers. So believe it or not, when people like Boxer, you know those famous people you've heard of, when they were playing in the early days, one of the reasons they were the best players is you couldn't get the replay and see exactly what he did in his build and what timing. You had to play against him and sort of infer what you could see with the fog of war. And that meant if he did a creative strategy, dude, it could take people months to figure out what he was doing and to counter it. Whereas the second they made replays, this is what happened. Whole teams were just studying all the replays. And then what happens is the very next game, someone has the hard counter to like this timing, they cut off, and they stop him. And essentially, all that work just becomes like what you call diminishing returns. It's not worth it. It actually becomes not worth it. In fact, in that scenario, you could even argue, if you want to be cynical, eventually, like a bunch of people copying off someone's schoolwork, you're going to get a couple of people who do all the work, and everyone else sits and waits and then peeks over your shoulder and copies your shit, you're actually going to get less experimentation and practice. In fact, if you're in a bad team, why bother working it? Why not let Carrigan and Glaive figure out the next strat, get the demo, and then just copy it? Why would you spend your time searching, like he's talking about, like for a week, figuring out, is this smoke working? Should we give it up? Like that cool aspect, which by the way is where everything great tactically came from in Counter-Strike, will be gone tomorrow. Like for real, it'll actually kill the soul of the game. And I'll fairly say, here's why even the argument, Maui, that like it'll level teams up doesn't even make sense. Because if that's true, then we can go back in time to 2016. And actually, I've always thought Valve was dead wrong. You know, Valve said you had to stop coaches talking all the time because they might be an IGL, which would be unfair to top teams. It's the other way around, you bozo. If every team could have the coach shot call, you'd have like 15 amazing tactical teams. You know why? Because Gob B would be an IGL of a team, but not playing. Existence would still be here. Zeus would be here. Fucking Zonic would do it. Who else? Threat in NIP. Probably Taz in GT. They'd all do it. And the idea is actually it would make the game too much like American football. You just have a million coaches calling the perfect play and doing it like that. So what we all love about Counter-Strike, think about the Glaive point earlier. Cuban can have some input, but we know he isn't doing it all. We know Glaive's making the mid-round call. He's making the adaptation between rounds before the timeout. We can tell who's doing what, and we know when that's what gives, by the way, if you're Eds, Glaive insane value. If everyone can watch all these demos and everyone can have anyone, at that point in time, the joke is it would actually go how you guys don't want it. At that point, you may as well just have everyone be good fraggers and just copy the tactics that we're all doing. So I actually think it's a bigger point than you realise, Rich. You're making it just from the coach perspective. I think it would actually, this actually could unravel like what we love about Counter-Strike and what's dope about when people do come with, I'll even give teams I don't like. You know what, I'm not a big fan of Furia, but fucking hell, they came with a lot of interesting smokes and stuff that I'd never seen before. And like, even if the other people then took it were better, they had like a week or two matches where they could have like won off that and it could have given them an edge. So I want them to get, if that was Gary, if that was art, respect, do that. We want to see it. But we all want to learn like the legit way, not just copy you. I think that's a great point.
I think also like that's why they did that in StarCraft, where they had like the in-house practice, right? So the replays wouldn't get
it was,
and you would have these perfect timings. Yes. And then we end up having I need to hire 3 more teams so I can practice in our own house here, right? And we all know how that level is gonna be, right? And it's just sad. It's bad. It's not good for anything. Yeah. It's just shit to say straight out.
Now, come on, Maui. What is your bad point?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what made this team so bad, and they obviously, well, just earlier today didn't make it to the major. And I think they're probably, of RMRB, Astralis to me is the most obvious team where you look at them and you're like, why is this team not working, even though the firepower is so good? And I think some people have been kind of like trying to find the one person that's falling off the hardest. So that would probably be Yabby. People are sometimes now blaming BlameF in terms of the fact that, you know, he's not a real in-game leader. And I think like those are kind of the two conflicting points right now for why this team isn't working. And I would have to say it's just a blending of both. I would say that like, and that's what's bad right now. It's that Astralis right now has a Yabby that is not performing like nearly as well as he used to, but he was thrust into different positions. Is like CT side spots, he swapped like at least half of them as far as I know. And for the calling, I find that when I'm watching Astralis now, I look back through the tournaments they played, like the Katowice, the play-in, the RMR, and the Blast Spring groups, and this team has just horrible trading percentage every single time. Because I was thinking, I narrowed my scope in the first place to be like, is this just going to be my bad point, just going to be Yabby? And then I actually had to broaden it because I was like, no, this is actually a systemic problem. Everybody on Astralis is taking bad ego duels at periods and times like that they shouldn't be. Like sometimes the way that Astralis is trying to get into bomb sites seems so lackadaisical. Like they might even have the utility necessary to set something up, but instead they just kind of like walk into a fight. And I feel like that's when I have to boil it down to blame F in the calling, because there's no real strong coaching figure behind this team right now. There's this Ronic guy, and I mean, maybe Rejin, you maybe know more than I do about this guy, but in terms of like his experience, there's just nothing that I can really poke at. And so,
by the way, also let's be real. The other problem the guy has is, bro, you're going to coach Astralis and be called Ronic. You're making the meme like, we want Zonic. Hey, we got Ronic. Oh, it said Zonic. Shit. Oh, we got Ronic. Like, you know what I mean? It's still on the nose, isn't it, guys?
I think like he got just pushed into it, basically.
Yeah,
I
of
don't think
course.
he's- Like, I don't think he's ready for it. Like, it's unfair to put anything on that guy at all. Like, I don't know him. I don't know anything about his history, to
He's
be
not-
honest, and everything.
I'm never pinning the blame of Astralis'
No.
failures on Ronick. Like that's don't get me wrong. Yeah, that's not where I'm going with this one. It's just that I think the calling right now has really run its course in terms of blame F as an in-game leader. That's kind of, and I think that Yabi hasn't found his footing either. And you could kind of take either one of those for why this Astralis team has failed in such a catastrophic manner to not even make it through the play-in of Katowice, to not make it through the RMR at all. Like they just lost to 9 Pandas earlier today in a game where, again, some of their T-side calling for blame F was just like, let's just walk out a door late on nuke, like with no supporting utility. Like these aren't really good calls. Like there's no layering of strategy. He's not letting the rounds develop in any meaningful way. It just seems kind of like lazy calling that they're going to brute force themselves through situations, and that may have worked. Honestly, this team might have worked in CS:GO, but in CS2, with these players and kind of, I'm not going to say like everybody's been condensed in terms of mechanical ability, but it's clear that some of the guys on Astralis haven't found their footing mechanically as they had when it was CS:GO. Like Yabi, I can still sometimes expect. I think there's always like per series, Yabi's going to find one Deagle 2K out of nowhere, but it's not like in a rifle situation I trust him like I used to, where he would just snap 2 people's heads off, transfer to the third guy. Like I've never seen those kinds of moments from him.
But like my initial thoughts on this was there's kind of twofolds in it, which I completely with you, Maui, like with the leadership and the whole staff behind Astralis. Of course I don't know, so I might speak out of my ass here. I apologize if I'm completely wrong, but it looks to me there is a clear lack of leadership. There is a clear lack of taking initiative, doing whatever might needed to be done. I think the best example is that why is it Stair going out taking the loser interview? Where is you have Device, one of the GOATs in CS:GO. You have BlameF, who's the leader. Like, come on, step up, take it to the chin, right? The second part of this is that I haven't deep dived into this, but as I understand and see, I believe that there's a lot of role switch as well. Like where Yabi used to play and where he plays now. Same with Down, where he used to play and where he plays now. And it's weird for me when you bring in, like, you spend that amount of money. Now, I don't know if it's true how much they spent, but at least a lot.
A ballpark,
right?
sure.
Yeah. And then you don't give them their best roles. Like, I mean, like, what are you doing? That is just my opinion of it. I am not saying this could be a situation where Yabi is saying, oh, I want to play here, right? This is actually where I prefer to play. Same goes with Down. We don't know that, right? But from an outside perspective, it looked like a lack of leadership and a clash of roles. That's how I see it. And then, like, where's the spirit, guys? Like, you're sitting there, 5 people, and you're like, huh. Right, like, they didn't even want to play. The Device out tweeting the day before or 2 days before. It's not fun to play. Like, there's something fundamentally wrong here.
What I would say is this: I'll definitely do a video on this topic. I might do it tomorrow. Obviously, you don't know when this is recorded, so who gives a fuck? Get memed on. But basically, the one thing, here's the thing. One of the things I hate about the Falcons and Astralis topic is people are getting like crazy schadenfreude off it, where they're loving the idea that people have failed, that they think like, don't deserve to succeed or did something wrong, or that it's just funny that like, the scale of them failing in this particular way. The problem I have is this is, you're not even always picking the guys that actually did the shit wrong, though. Like, for example, why would you laugh that Device doesn't qualify? Because then Stown didn't. Like, I get if you're a Cadian fan, fuck Stown and Yabi, right? You just think they betrayed me. Yeah, but why would that be cool that, like, Device fails? Like, why would you laugh at that? You know what I mean? Like, what's the connection? Like, at that point, aren't you just a hater? Like, I understand that angle. Here's the one angle I'll join in that, is I'll just say this one thing. If you are Stown and you are Yabi, you just learned today what Cadian did. You didn't know that before, did you? You thought he was making like weird calls, or his ego was too big, or he thought he was trying to control too much. Maybe he was even telling you positions you didn't want to play, or things and maybe it all seemed like it was his ego, right? I'll tell you what, ego was sort of justified, wasn't it, boys? 'Cause I'll tell you what, you looked fucking amazing when you played with that guy. And when I've seen you without him, not quite the same. So that's one thing I would just say is, You know, grass isn't always greener. In fact, the joke is, I believe this actually is a real phenomenon in real life. I don't know if you know this about me. I think someone once claimed that saying, even though it's obviously meant to mean like, you know, like sort of understand what you've got yourself, it might not be better over there. I think someone even said it's there might even be like an actual optical thing where it's like based on light and how far your distance is that grass might appear greener. But the joke is when you get closer, because you'd be from a different perspective, it'll be the same bloody grass, won't it? You'd be like, what the fuck? And then the joke is you'll look back at the other grass and be, wait a minute, that grass back there is looking fucking sick. Now it's like, it's where you're stood round now, you idiot. So the point here, if you're Yabby and Stown, is you just looked over and thought, fuck this heroic team. Let's be real, if you're Stown, because of all this pressure I have to carry, it's like, what if I had Blame F and Device? No pressure then. It'd be rolling. There'd be like 4 of us. We'd all be equally good. We'd all be equally top 20 players. We'd just roll. Who even needs IGL? Fucking Blame can do it. And then the Stair guy, he'll just do whatever shit rolls we want. This is the dream. We're going to be awesome here. And it's the ego of the star player. All star players to some degree have a little bit of that put into them, where the problem they have, like that fan I was talking about earlier, is they know a bit of the game. They know their part and how it interacts with the team, but they don't always know what the IGL's doing at the back, or what the fucking guy on the outskirts who's the lurker's doing, or even what the util guy behind them's doing when he throws them a flash. They just get to, intentionally so, you don't want people to be overburdened with information. They get to live in their own little bubble, and the problem now is they're all in a little bubble, except the Stair guy, who, as far as I can tell, just his job is to fill. There's 4 of them in a bubble, and they're all realising, like, wait a minute, well, I'm not doing it all. So who is doing this? It's like, no one is, bros. You're all just 4 players playing by yourself. Like, there's no cohesion. There's no, like, logic to the team. So I'd very quickly just say the most obvious things this team needs tomorrow is a better IGL, like an actual established one we know works, and then a better coach, someone who, again, who's established, who's done it. The reason why that's not even an unreasonable request is, why the fuck would Astralis not be able to get a great coach? I mean, the joke is, I'll talk about this in my video, they've already fired like half the coaches you would fucking hire. They've even fired Hunden, who, by the way, I think would be straight fire with this team. If there's ever a team, that's why I said to get MSL as a ridiculous one. I said that as a fucking stick to beat them with, because I'll tell you one thing MSL will bring you tomorrow: structure. He'll tell you all where you're going to, I'll tell you what, he won't take any guff, because here's the other thing I'm going to say. Knowing star players, I bet I know exactly what happened here, and I'm going to reveal more stuff about NIP right now. It's what apparently happened in NIP. Are you ready? So you know in NIP, I said it's sort of like they had 3 players that were the same player. They had Rez, Config, and Brolan. Bro, when you find out what they did, this is absolute fucking ass. They did exactly the worst of all worlds. They didn't say, right, well, what we're going to do is, he's most famous, so like Config gets to be the entry, but like the guy who, after the space creator, like, you're going to make Config the star. No. And they didn't say, right, well, you know, like, we'll just like have a debate and then see like who makes the better point. What they did was pure democracy. They were like, right, well, logically, no one should get fucked all the time, and none of us should get... So they were like, right, on this map, you're this guy there, and then on the other map, he's that, and on CT, you get your side on this first map, but then on the other map, he gets his spots, and that is the worst of all worlds, because not only are you spreading it all out in a way that doesn't make sense, but then you're not even going to have consistency, because the joke is, like, I'm the star on this one map, but then we play the team that vetoes into a map that I'm not on, and suddenly after I'm cooking on map 1, I'm on the fucking outskirts on some shitter roll, holding a flash, while the guy who isn't warmed up at all, he's now in the... Like, you can see how that's terrible. Like, I'm almost certain they've done this in Astralis, bro. It gives it away when you saw that video, that interview with Blame F, where he went out of his way to say that he gave up some of his spots when he became IGL so that he could, like, do whatever was necessary. I think they all did that. I think because they all thought... The joke is we don't even need a convo. We're all we're all fucking bangers, mate. All we need to do is play. I think they all naively thought we can just sort of, by committee, by democracy, spread it out. And that isn't how Counter-Strike works. It's why, actually, I think it was Nero said this. This is like one of those days where if you're someone like me who believes there's roles and there's tendencies and there's certain resources and everyone can't have their role, this is one of the days where you fucking raise your flag and it is glorious. Because essentially, on paper, I even did a past point. You remember this, Maui? I think it was only a couple of episodes back. I said one of my really good points is, even though I didn't know how the roles would work, it's mega exciting to see these 4 names together, though. You see these 4 names, you're like, fuck, I don't know how, but if you could make it work. And the problem with that is, like, that's exactly the issue. Like, someone said it earlier, it might even have been the Nero guy again. I can't remember who said this first, but when they initially, the rumour came out, Stabby and Stown and Yabby are going to go to Astralis, someone made the point, like, But if you already have BlameF and Device, didn't you get the wrong 2 players? Shouldn't you have gotten like Tessus and Shush? Because the joke is, if you put them in, like they're already a fucking hard entry and a support. Like, bro, that's the team. But the point is, they didn't get that. They just saw, and the players themselves, like, but I'm the best one in. They didn't get like, yeah, because you were BlameF and Device in that analogy. You were the one set up to succeed. So I just think they've done it by democracy. I think they fucked up. That's why if you bring in a Nigerian coach, the job is, I hope they would understand, your job is to fix that or you're fired. So that's why you bring that guy in tomorrow, because people are getting way too caught in the sauce of like, who should I cut and who should be removed? First of all, nobody is benching players that were signed for $1.5 million. You're not going to bench them after 2 tournaments, you idiot. There's not an infinite money. They can't just buy more players. And it's even worse. They've just failed to get the sticker money. There is no fucking millions to buy more players. So that's why, even if it's unfair, people are thinking about cutting the Stair guy. Because the difference is he is at 1.5 million and he hasn't done it yet. So even though I don't think he's to blame, I also think if you're Astralis, you're trying to be number 1 in the world. You're not trying to be who's not the worst player. You're trying to be, what can I do to make the players I have to keep, which I'm sorry, the other 4, what can I do to make them as good as possible? So this is why, even though I don't know that they can ever make the roles work, like if they had taken the other heroic players, I am certain this is not it though. If you get this, and by the way, please don't do this. It's not that this has proven these 4 players can't play together. They don't have a real IGL. They don't have a real coach. As far as I'm concerned, they haven't even started to explore what's possible with these 4 players. If you really could tomorrow bring in fucking 1 million people, if you could bring in Zonic, the joke is even some of the people they fired might have done the job. Trace, fucking Ave, Rejin's here. Loads of people. There's loads of people. Basically, anyone Danish was. Rugger. These people all have history. And as long as they were people who had the balls to have this hard conversation, which is probably going to go like this, and you're not going to like it, it might even be like this. Sorry, Stown. Or BlameF, which one? One of you doesn't get it. The other one does. Sorry, Yabby, you have to play. Whatever it is, the point is, this is the part people are missing. You don't have to be the HLTV top 20 player you were in Heroic. All you have to do is be functional. Because the difference is, if you're functional, we can make the other people the top 20 players. And bro, you don't need 4 top 20 players. 2 is enough, like history has shown you. So if you have this team, make it. You pick, maybe it's Stown and Device. Maybe it's BlameF. You pick who the players are. It has to be Device, let's be real, because he's the AWPer. But you pick the 2 players, build the rest of the team around them, and it'll work. Like, these players, I refuse to believe these are just morons who can only play one position. Like, it's not American football. You didn't sign 4 wide receivers. You can play a role. Like, Yabby can play a role that's not quite as good, but it still works. It's just you have to have a system, in my opinion, when you do, especially when you're doing things that aren't your natural role. If you do a different role, you're going to need someone to hold your hand a bit. So I actually hate the way that people are so... To me, we haven't seen many matches of this team. People are acting like it's over already, like it's definitely failed, and we must well toss it in the bin. Like, no, you can still do things. What do you think, Rich? You can still do something with these 4 players. Come on.
Yeah, I want to touch 2 things you said. Like, one thing is that the 2 players you decide to buy is Yabby and Stown. Like, it's mind-blowing to me that you don't pick up Shush, probably the best anchor, and the way he's playing in position alongside with Magisk, right?
Yes.
And Magisk you're not going to get, right?
Yes.
Tessus does everything for the team. Flying around, does whatever he does. Like, he just do everything for the team. Instead, you take 2 other players, where one of them is a star player, and Yabby is kind of like in between, right?
Yes, yes.
And suddenly, like, you have this role class, and now I just quickly checked, and it looks to me that BlameF still has all the star positions. Stown has none of it. He has new positions. He's a young guy, like all these things, like you're saying, they didn't really get a chance to go through. Yeah. And I'm disappointed to see that the BlameF. This is my take, and this is how I see it outside. I don't have anything to know inside, right? But why don't you, as BlameF, say, Stown, you go do that, and I'm gonna focus on leading the team and everything? Because it's not like BlameF has been like performing, right? Like, it's not like it's been like Dunk or something, right? Like, far from. I think Stair is the best player, right, in this tournament. So that means only
statistically,
only do you have an in-game leader who wants to play star position, but is not playing like up to that. Now you have another star player who doesn't play the star position and plays something like, it doesn't make sense in my head what is happening here. But of course, like, we don't like, this is also looking from an outside perspective. Right? I don't want to step on anyone's toes, right? But it's just what it looks like from the outside. It looks like you just roll some dice, like you say, and be like, oh, you got that roll, right? And I'm gonna stay here, right? Like, this like, what position did you give up, bro? Right? Like, I don't know. Like, and I don't understand, but I'm 100% sure with you, Thorin, on this one, that like they should be able to make this work. But I would probably, for me, I would put down the star position and cut Blamef.
Okay.
And because the thing is, they might lack some time to develop into these new roles. But where is the leadership? Where is the synergy? Where's the enjoyment of playing? Right?
Yes.
Like all these things are not there. And I believe that falls back to the in-game leader to make sure it's there. And if it's not there, it's his responsibility to fix it. Because a coach can only do so much. And at an RMR, you're not allowed to say anything. You have to sit like this. Ooh. Right? You can't even cheer. You're winning, right? So that is not gonna help you. So you need an in-game leader or a guy to pick up the team when they're down, and that was what Cadian did so freaking well, right? Like it or not, he is good at it, right? And Blamef is
it's even something I'll bet they're also thinking about now, mate. I'll bet. Here's the thing. I've said this story before. It's actually a story I learned this from the player Taz that everyone loves, right? One thing we all love about Taz, he has amazing charisma and presence, right? In his teams, he doesn't like the story, but it's true, mate. And he knows it's true, right? Back in the day, in the legendary Golden Five that was winning all those world championships, the problem is, like Cadian, he didn't just do the baller speech once in a while. He did it every game. And eventually, even his own teammates behind his back would sort of make fun and be like, he's doing one. They would call him the general. They'd be like, he's going to do his movie speech again. And the problem is, if you do it every time, eventually people even think what's the point of that? So eventually you get soured on it, right? I'll tell you what, I could easily believe they did that with KD. Remember, the joke is every fucking last match in every tournament, he was like, guys, the reason I was the sperm that made it into the egg is I knew I was fucking built different. I knew that we were going to do it this way, and we're going to hold hands and ascend spiritually to the ninth dimension where they can't battle us because they're just heathen. They were just doing all that shit, right? I bet that does get old, especially when you lose the match. And but here's the difference. I'll tell you what, at the end of this game, when you all had a face like a slapped arse and you couldn't go and do the interview because you were so ashamed that you sent the young fucking kid out who's should be, as Rejin says, in football, he'd still be the fucking rookie, polishing people's boots. You don't send him to do the interview because you lost the cup final. In that scenario, I bet you wish you had that goofy fucking Cadian guy going, come on, bros, we're going to get him next time. You know what's down? I'll figure it out, mate. It's on me. Hey, guys, let's go get together, heroic on 5, and you know what? I'll go do the interview. That's what you're fucking missing now, isn't it? I tell you what, that'd take a lot of pressure off you. Also, notice there's another thing, Stown. Tell you what, that Cadian fucking amazing at tanking aggro, though, isn't he? He's the one that's going to go and do the interview and say all the stuff. We failed, I failed. And all the fans are going to go, ha, Cadian washed. Now, you're getting all the hate because you sent the Steyr guy and you didn't do it. So, again, grass is always greener. Grass is always... Right, come on, boys.
I think one last thing to touch on that is
go
also
on, go for it.
Blamef, he was not always sneaking leader, right? So, and the thing is, you need a certain...
Oh, shall I tell you a detail that'll actually blow your mind? This will make both of you literally cringe inside knowing what's happened. In the HLTV interview I referred to, that Blamef did, he says that he was asked to be IGL. Guys, he didn't even want to do this role.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that's
Astralis came to him and just said, essentially,
thing, right?
as far as I can tell, to kick Glaive, they were like, could you IGL? And he was like, yeah. That's the worst shit ever. I want to hear on this project. No, I wanted to listen. I have an idea. I've got a plan for how this is going to work. If you bring me stuff, that's what you want to hear from Blamef, don't you? If it's really the case that he's just doing it because he's a nice guy, that's terrible. You can see why that makes you cringe already, knowing that info if it's true.
But I also think I remember I played with Glaive when he was 14 years old.
Okay.
14 years old, and I could feel this guy was special. He was 14.
He was so sick, he actually used to pull out a little notebook and he used to write, and some of those strats he only used now. That's how fucking dope he was. It was like the Death Note. Nah,
but back then, I was thinking leader back then, right? And I was really, right?
Sure.
And I was playing with him and MSL. He was also there, and Glaive would just take over sometimes. Allan, we're gonna do this. I'd be like, oh, okay. So you could just feel he has this natural leadership instinct. Right. MSL was the same. MSL was exactly the same. He also have this natural thing coming to him, right? Where other players I have played with, they didn't have, right? And I think Kerrigan, when I played with him, he was what? I think he's been 14 as well. He didn't have that, but he grew into it, right? It took him a long time to become this great engineer, in my opinion. But he also nailed it.
By the way, someone make the graphic right now. I know there's someone out there who's better than me at making memes. Make the Master Splinter meme with Rejin, and then it's Glaive, MSL, Kerrigan, and then he's older. And then true, you did.
I play with Snappy as well, actually.
Right, there you go. There's the meme. Make it.
That's the 5-4.
Yes.
No, but my point is that if you don't have this natural leadership, right, you are gonna have a hard time leading the team, right? Now, when I joined TSM, I had the same question with Valde. do you want in-game lead, or did you get pushed to do it? And he said, I want to do it.
Yes.
I want to be in-game leading, right? And you can feel it on him. The way he's talking, he's I like to like this soldier reference. Like he's commanding, assertive, and he just know what he wants. And every time something goes wrong, he's the first guy to say, "My bad, guys. You know what? Come on, we got this." Like we lost to some ridiculous apps pop, full Glock, no armor, nothing, right? And the first thing he said was like, "Guys, it doesn't matter. I should have called something differently as CT side, even though he was on B side
Sure.
and had nothing to do with what happened. He just took it all in on his shoulders, and we carried on, and we went 13-3, even losing that round. And it's just like, okay, that's a leader. Like Astralis, go get Velde. Like if you want a leader, right?
Yes.
Get Glaive, get Kerrigan. Like, but get a leader, right? That's what this team needs, in my opinion. Now, again, I don't know Blame personally, so maybe he is that, but it doesn't look like it.
Right, well, we can go to mine then, because here's the good thing. It's actually perfectly tying together because I've made it very specific. I don't actually, you know what, spoiler, I used to be a massive fan of Astralis. I'm not a fan of any org guys, like unless I know the org owner, like Jack from Cloud9 or Carlos from G. I don't give a fuck what an org does. This isn't like football where I've supported Liverpool my whole life. Like, fucking orgs are the players, and in esports it's the players. I follow the players. So, spoiler, when Device went to NIP, I gave more fuck about NIP than I did about Astralis. So, I don't have this whole thing that everyone else was like, oh my God, Astralis not in the first ever major. Astralis wasn't the best team since 2019, for fuck's sake. What are you talking about? Like, those days were years ago. Like, remember the previous lineups would probably, they would have been touch and go, but they could have failed too. The ones with Buzz and Altex, and then even before that, Config and Play, these ones were like always on the fence of making it. So people are acting like 1 second before Yabi came, it was fucking prime Astralis, and now he's coming, he just fucked the whole thing up. Like, no, Astralis was always touch and go. So Astralis not being there is not the end of the world. They haven't been that big org for years. They just got that status in Denmark. My problem is this, and there's one name only that it breaks my fucking heart, and it's Device. Because, mate, what did Device do wrong? Someone explain that to me. Did he sell out to the Saudis? Did I miss that? Did he betray Cadian and leave her? Did I miss that? Did he kick Glitch? Did I miss any of this? As far as I can tell, all this guy did was sit at his PC, watch demos, practice AWPing over a year, get himself back to literally be one of the best players in the world, and now he was given some good players, and because he himself and all of them have failed, he's not going to be at the last major, even though, by the way, he might actually be the most consistent Counter-Strike player ever to play the game, like ever. Like, that's the real one for me that kills me. It's not that Astralis, it's that Device isn't going to be at this Danish major, mate, and the first CS2 major. Like, aside from his play in this one qualifier, this guy's done nothing wrong. He's actually he's a model professional. He's what every team would fucking want from a star and an AWPer. So that's the one that kills me. I think that's why I just put it as my flat bad. I think it's just bad for Counter-Strike that Device isn't there. By the way, as a minimum, since they've done it at other majors, please, like, just invite all the players from Astralis that were the legendary light to the major and have them come on stage or present the cup or something. Just do that at a minimum so we can have that cool pop. You know, just be a nice gesture, PGL. What do you guys think anyway?
It's, I mean, yeah, it's a team sport. So unfortunately, Device has just had bad luck with choosing teams lately. I mean, he's, well, the NIP one is kind of weird, obviously, because it's not really like, that didn't go badly because of the team that he was on. Actually.
No, he had some real life shit. Yeah, sure.
External circumstances, obviously, but yeah, the thing, Astralis has failed now in consecutive majors to put forward a lineup that, even with Device, is qualifying, despite the fact that, yeah, Device himself, I mean, he didn't go absolutely crazy at this RMR. In fact, this was kind of one of his weaker events in a while. But in terms of the previous RMR, like, he did pretty damn well for himself, like the one for Paris, and yet him and Astralis didn't qualify for that one either. That one, I think, probably in a weird way hurts more than this one does, because I think Device probably can look towards himself and be like, I didn't play the best individual Counter-Strike. I didn't play the best level at this one, but the way that he lost reminder, he lost at the Paris RMR to NIP, who he had just left and yet he had a stellar game there, and that's when he was still playing with BlameF, Zip, Glaive, and Buzz. So, and overall, like, as an individual, I think he has to top the list right now for players that haven't qualified for the major, because I'm trying to think, like,
it would just be the Falcons players, Magics and stuff, Magics.
It would have been a Falcons player, or obviously Simple didn't try because he wasn't on a team.
Sure.
And then I think you'd probably say like Magisk and Device are the two best players, and maybe you could make a case even for Sun Pius as the three best players right now that didn't make it to this major. So overall, just really disappointing. And I know that you say you don't have any real allegiance to orgs or anything like that. It's not really about that. But I think for Copenhagen, the Copenhagen Major to have the most just like fan reverie and for people to really get excited about it. If Astralis were in that arena, I don't even care because I'm not an Astralis fan, but I know that they would have lit it up for that one.
Sure. Oh, by the way, I'll also say this as well. I should have tied this into the other point. The one angle on Device that I will say goes like this. That is the biggest fucking massive, like insane red flag that this current lineup of Astralis doesn't work. That it's the only lineup ever that made Device look bad. Bro, he looked dope in the lineups Maui was listening, where like you forget like Boz, Alltech, Borup, Washed, Zipnik's like, dude, he had some bad teammates and he was balling out of control. So that's why also I look at this team and I just think, get a coach in IGL, because the easiest player to get back to a good level is going to be Device. But if even he seems uncomfortable in the game, that's a really bad sign. Because I even told him this in DM. I told him, mate, you have never been bad at Counter-Strike one day in your life since you reached the top. So like essentially, like this can't continue. It can't.
Yeah, I think he didn't play up to what Device can. But he has some showings. Like there was the one round on Vertigo where he like popped off, like killing 3 spirit guys. Yep. They won a round they should never have won, right? So you still saw him popping off left and right.
I think even in the round that like cost him the game almost, he had to almost did a 1v3 or something. He just got killed on the last kill.
I think he's not been playing that bad as maybe people make him to, because people look at stats. Like they just look at stats. But if Astralis get run over, right? Like they get run over today against 9 Pandas on their CT side on Nuke, right? They lost like 8-4 or something like that, and it's hard to be super performing as an AWPer, right? And if you're losing 8-4 on Nuke, how many rounds do you realistically have AWP, etc.? Now I didn't check, right? So, but and I also think Nikolai is one of these players who needs good mood and good mentality to be able to play well. And again, I just keep coming back to that, but it looks like a graveyard when you fucking look at them playing, right? And I think that is their number one problem, because it looks like from the outside as well, Yabi and Stown also thrives when there's a good mood. And you saw that was it Blast, where they beat Versatility and stuff like that? Like, they were good mood. They were winning. It's also easier to have a good mood when you're winning, right? But when you start winning, that snowball rolls, and you're fucking gonna demolish everyone, right? But if you start losing and you don't have someone to lift you up, which it seems like here in the RMR, and like the Runnick, I can't blame him, but he didn't really help much, right? When I saw him, he's standing there like behind, didn't say anything, didn't do anything, right? When they lost, he was like, nice guys. And I don't blame him, right? He's in this new situation, right? But there's no one to come and pick these players up. And if your star player in Device is not enjoying himself, you have a huge ass problem, right? And he is not going to perform to the level you expect if he doesn't enjoy playing, right?
eSportsBet is also running their Chinese New Year Red Envelope Frenzy promotions. You go to the promotion section here, and you're going to go over to this one here, Red Envelope Frenzy. Again, make sure you apply it all. To check that all out, you can always contact customer support if you want to find out the details. The way this one works is, and this is crucial, everyone can do this particular one. You can just only do it once is all. So the way it works is, if you deposit 100 USDT, you will receive the following: an extra 100 USDT, so a 100% match. You will get 100,000 ESC, their own coin, which you can use to make bets and predictions and convert into USDT. Check out the website for more details. And even though this is a League of Legends one, you can do it anyway. You got to do this bet first, but you basically get a risk-free bet on Tier 1 League of Legends. So it has to be on LCK, LPL, LEC, LCS, or PCS spring season. Basically, it's risk-free bets. You get the crypto back if you lose anyway. So there's a lot of value to be gained from this one, and each account can use it. Right, let's move on then. The last category is obviously the ugly one. Rejin, what is yours? Spoiler. Here's the thing, Maui. Essentially, he's sort of like what I was talking about, hot tip, but he's essentially done like the whole laundry list of all the things you can complain about with like the qualification system. So come on, hit me with it, Rejin, because obviously I'm always up for this topic.
I mean, like, I think there is, it's all intertwined, I would say. So I have to start with the situation of MR12 and economy. And this comes back to, you have the ecstatics, you have the Amcal coming along, they're beating these teams. In an MR12, maybe they win both pistol rounds. You're up 4-0. You were converting 6-0. So you already lost the game, right? That is how it is.
Yes.
I think Snappy said it really good in an interview I saw with him. He said like, well, now you can lose 9-3 and you have to swap sides. Before you could lose 9-3, but you would have the tactical knowledge and understanding what to do to counter this or come up with a solution for this and end the half 9-6. Now, if you then win the pistol round, suddenly it's 9-9, right?
Yes.
So that was the biggest difference from MR12 to MR15. And with the economy being as it is, like one key round, you're behind 6-0, right? Like what you can do. It's not even because you played bad CS necessarily, but maybe let's say you lose a CT, right? You buy a third round because you want to eco, so you buy a third round. That means you don't have nades. Let's say you play overpass. Maybe you expect them to do a B rush. You stack 4B in the beginning because you're low on utility. The other team is rushing A. What are you gonna do? You can just roll the dice and hope for the best, right? And you don't have the rounds to keep up with it. That you can't catch up anymore, right? So suddenly you're behind 5-0 on overpass CT, which you should be locking down, getting 10 rounds, right? And you're just fucked from that point, right? So the MR12 and the economy is like my starting point. I don't know if you want to say something to that before I go on.
No, keep going. We've talked about all of these topics before, so we'll come in after. Don't worry.
And that intertwines to the Bo1 in a major qualifier.
Oh, yeah.
Like, honestly, give me a fucking break. These teams, there's many teams who would not have lost to these teams if it was the best of 3. Because if you have a slow start, unlucky, you're out.
Yes.
Right? Are you gonna have to face G2 now or something bullshit like that, right? Because they also fucked up.
Yes.
And suddenly you have, I don't want to take, like, this is very important for me. I don't want to take anything away from those who qualified.
Sure.
But sorry to say, ecstatic Apex in a 2-1 match. How can that be? And then in a 2-2 match, ecstatic Guild Eagles. And it's the most stacked group of the A and B, right? B was so stacked compared to A. And it's just like, how can they get so quote unquote easy bracket? You know what I mean? There is so many flaws in this system. But I cannot highlight enough. I'm super happy Ecstatic made it to the major and everyone else, right? Happy for them. But the system is utterly flawed. And especially when you take everything consider MR12 economy, you can just roll a fucking dice, mate. Like, honestly. Like, it's so stupid. Like, you can just rush B 1 round, win. Oh, they stacked A, unlucky. Now we rush A. Oh, they stacked B, unlucky. You're behind 5-0. Have fun. I mean, like, come on, mate. There is nothing skillful about that. And I might be hard. I don't know.
The economy is something that seems to control the narrative of maps so much more than I wish it did. I don't know if I necessarily think it's better or worse than hard resets, because hard resets back in the day, I do remember also doing similar things where it was like you win 4 in a row, they win 1, you reset them, and then you win 4 in a row again. That stuff really kind of blew also. So, but I think that, I mean, it's hard to, it's just apples.
It doesn't have to be one or the other, though. There's also a range. You can change the steps of the economy. That's the other thing. We never get to tweak it.
This economy felt better with MR15 because by round 12, you basically have gun rounds for the rest of the half. Like if you're saving, if you're saving a few guns, and that's where it felt like, that's why it always felt like, actually, one thing that was nice with MR15 with this economy is that rounds 13, 14, 15, and 28, 29, 30 generally led to some of the most exciting Counter-Strike every single time, and it led to this great climax that you knew was going to be sick, but you actually, if you look at like how some of these games play out, a lot of times they're just sort of scrappy buys on round 23, 24, and it's just like, how did this even happen? Like, it's just so awkward, and you see so many teams because teams know it's so important to control the economy, sometimes you'll watch, I remember I was watching, I'm pretty sure it was MOUZ versus Cloud9 if that happened. I don't know when that would have been. Was that a Katowice or something? Either way, I think there was some game I watched. I remember where it's just like the team couldn't even get an op for so long because they were just in force by wars that they kind of knew they had to do that. They had to do it, and because just not forcing would have been so bad. And I think that's more than anything, I think that op discussion has kind of died. Like, I think to me, the op discussion of like, is the op relevant in CS2 isn't about the gun anymore. It's just about money management. Like, I don't really like, the gun feels good again. Like, if you're playing a lot at like a good level, like when you see Simple use an op in a face it pug, he's going to destroy everybody with it. It's not the gun.
Sure. It's
just that in a professional game of Counter-Strike, you might only have that op for 2 rounds in your CT side because you were in weird force fire wars for like the first 6 rounds, and then you could only afford it 1 round, etc. You know, it sucks in that regard because it doesn't feel like we're actually getting to see that full tactical style of Counter-Strike because there's just so many haphazard buys that are just like, well, they just had to do this. They had to go for that, or else they would have been screwing themselves.
All I'll say is this. Go on.
I just want to say one last thing. It is also connected to this. The map pool is fucking dog shit. Like, I mean, a map like Vertigo, who loves it, right? It's so bad, right?
So bad.
And it's not even AWP friendly and stuff like that, right? Then you have Anubis. I actually like Anubis, but it needs to be reworked. It is so T-sided. It's insane. And this is where it becomes not about good CS anymore. It's about, are they gamble stacking correctly, the CTs? Because you have to gamble stack if you want to win a round, because you cannot sit back. You're gonna get screwed over left, right, and sideways, right? Like, there is nothing to do. So I think like it's when you combine everything, you have I don't know. It's so bad. Like, I don't even know the word for it. Maybe you have a good analogy here, Duncan.
I mean, all I would say is, like, look, I've already covered this many times on all these shows, and sadly, the real problem goes like this. This is where you're never allowed to win in Counter-Strike. If I brought this up on a random Thursday that's in the middle of fucking May when there is no major, people would go, why are you bringing that up? What's that got to do with anything? RMR qualify. But if I bring it up after the teams get eliminated, which is the most obvious time to look and go, well, fuck, they're playing BO1s. Then they'll go, you're just salty that team went. So you're not allowed to ever have the opinion, basically. But the point is, I'll bring it back to what I said in my first response to your point about the good teams, the new ones coming along. I've always said this, mate. If they can play a properly seeded RMR that has best of 3, and then they beat Astralis, Falcons, then fuck it. Let's see them at the major. Because you know what? A team that can win that series might do something. A team that wins a BO1, I don't know what the fuck they're doing. A BO1's not enough. And now it's a BO1 with MR12, which is even less. And people don't know, what Rejin explained there was basically the famous Zonix law thing, which the joke is, 1, it's not a law, and 2, people are so stupid. They thought the law was you always lose games that you're up 11-4. The point, as he said there, was 11-4 feels like 12-3, but the difference between 11-4 and 12-3 is, as Rejin says, you lose the pistol, you don't win the force, and suddenly it's like 11-7. And 11-7 is not a big lead. And actually, you've got a lot of work to do in MR15 to get to 16. You've got 5 whole rounds. And if this is like Nuke T-side, you're actually in a really tough spot now. You felt like you were massively ahead, but you weren't. Whereas, yeah, you're right. If you're up 9-3, if you win that pistol, it's off. It's over. Like, you feel like you're walking home. So I agree. That's why the MR12 ones made it even worse in BO1s. And then lastly, I also agree on the map pool one. My problem with the map pool one goes like this, right? There's almost no team. The joke is 9's about it. There's almost no team seems to actually enjoy that map. It was always like a third map or a punish pick. No one was playing it because it's dope and there's all these mega angles. And then listen, Vertigo's bad enough, mate. The newer one, even though people like it, is obviously Anubis, right? Because the problem both maps have is they're so shit when they came out. They're both like fucking retake simulators. Like, I hate the fact that on Anubis, it reminds me of the early Vertigo. It's watching people who don't even leave the sites. Because, by the way, try pushing out of those fucking sites on Anubis. You just get killed instantly. You can't go out. So you have to sit in the site, never knowing when they're going to attack. Essentially, it's like, that's why it's a retake simulator. You're just sat there waiting for them to rush you. And the whole game becomes, who got lucky on the timing? Did you get lucky on your timing that you were like a spot they didn't expect? Did they get lucky that they flashed you where you couldn't get, you're fucked if you get flashed? These aren't things that, like, that's not a tactical decision. That's not a brain making a cool choice. It's a lot of random luck, in my opinion. So I hate that we've got like a couple of maps in the map pool. Like, you can have maybe one like that to be a bit weird. You can't have 2, guys. You can't have 2. That also, because like you say, Rejin, each one of these is like a point in itself. But if you add it all together, even if I'm making looking, if each of these makes it 5% worse, bro, at the end we've took like 40% off this motherfucker. Like we've made it way worse. So it's why I made that tweet, which I will say, I noticed, just go and look which players liked that tweet. When I just said, I think this is the worst major qualification system we've ever had, guys. Like it's actually the worst ever because it's not, it's what, here's the thing. I want to blame Astralis for not making it for how they played, not because a couple of them were BO1s. You know what I mean? I don't want that even be a fact. I actually want to be able to just know that they failed. Right, okay, let's go on then. Maui, what is your ugly point? It's a similar one. It's in the same vein. So where are you going on this one?
Okay, well, I want to say one super quick thing about the map pool, just to follow.
You can do it if you want. Go for it.
Yeah,
you can say as much as you want, man.
I just had one small thing is that I actually over time, Ancient has become my favorite map to watch. That's kind of out of nowhere, and I didn't think it was at first. It was way too CT sided, but now the mid rounding is so fun to watch on it. You see the level of outplay that people have because the options are so straightforward, and you don't necessarily need. There aren't a million angles you need to clear every time you want to go for a cool mid round. I think the map has played out very well, and I think just the fact that they relocated the spawns a little bit to make it so that it's not so CT side favored at the start of every round, that was such a huge update. And it's the one time of these maps where I feel like, okay, Valve did something pretty good here. That being said, like I'm not. Every time I watch Vertigo, I'm almost just like sad that I'm sitting in my chair.
I would say one thing to that, like with the Ancient, is like what I love about that and I hate about it is that when you have an advantage at either side, you don't always feel it as an advantage because like it can shift so fast. And that's what I love about Ancient as well. Like it's not clear cut who's the winner, and if the one who has the advantage is making one mistake, and the one in disadvantage is making an awesome retake play or whatever it might be, right? Suddenly they can snowball all right. I would say one thing about Vertigo is how you beat Dunk, because he can't control the duels he's gonna get. So I think that's also why you see him struggle on that map.
Sure.
Because he cannot control the duels at all, where you see him demolish on every other map, right? So that's maybe a positive. I don't know.
No, that's actually a good argument. No, it's a positive for you. It's actually an argument why the map's shit. If even Donk can't do anything, then yeah, fuck it. And by the way, the joke is you can make it more than Donk. That's also a great map you always had a chance against Vitality on, because you can just get stuck on a site. Same with Simple. It actually does counter the superstar players, you notice. So it's even a point, actually, I think, in favour of the map not being that great. Because I'd just say this, to Maui's point at the end there, here's why you know Ancient is fine now. I've always given this as a rule, and if you look, it's a great lens for whether maps are good, right? There's people who pick Anubis now because they know a lot of people suck on it. There's people who pick Ancient because they really like the map, and you can tell the difference. Before, it started out as the map everyone wasn't playing. Now loads of teams play Ancient, and they will pick it. Because here's the difference. If I pick Anubis because you're bad, I'm punishing you. If I pick it when we're both good on Ancient, that means the map's good. That's a little lens you can use. Anyway, what's your point, Maui? What's your ugly point?
So my ugly point is something I brought up on Twitter that just seems so abundantly apparent. And actually, it was one of the rare opinions I had where Reddit just almost entirely agreed with me.
My God.
Yeah, okay. I know. So I think that this is it's practically unanimous at this point.
Okay. And
the ugly point is just simply that the RMR is now more important than the Major. And to me, the 2 RMRs every year are the most important tournaments of the year. That is not how I would expect or imagine a championship circuit to be run in any sport, where qualifying for the biggest tournament of the year is actually more important for most people than more the players that is, than actually the Major itself. And that's obviously due in part to the fact that the financial incentives for qualifying for the Major are so high, but the sticker money, which we all have seen the numbers on at this point, and even to the point where I forgot who from Apex said this, but when they lost out of Katowice, they were kind of like, "Oh, who really cares about Katowice? It's all about the RMR
really?
anyway."
Okay.
That was like such a ridiculous statement where it was like, we've gotten that far.
Must be what people are thinking, though. Yeah.
That's how people think. And it almost feels like, in a weird way, like when Falcons made it to the semis of Katowice, that's like a curse to them, because now you have less time to prep for the event that probably matters more in a lot of people's eyes, which is, you're going to look back at the end of your season, if you're Falcons, you're going to be like, oh, we had that semis in Katowice. I think they're going to hurt a lot more of the fact they didn't even qualify to the Major. That's really what they're thinking too. So this is it's gotten to and so there's so many different sides to take on this one, but I just feel like you and I had a little back and forth ourselves, Thorin, on Twitter with this, where it was just that this is not like, it shouldn't, other than practically speaking, winning the entire major or maybe coming in, say, second place and making your, like, you know, having that opportunity on the big stage, no one seems to really care they're placing that much at the major as long as they make it. And so that it just, in a legacy way, it's so strange. And I want to just kind of like talk about a potential fix as opposed to just saying this is just bad right now. I just think that what needs to be done is that Valve needs to invite people that at least get to top 2 of the previous major, if not top 4. Those cores should be re-invited back to the major. And I know that it felt a little weird before, where it was like sometimes these lineups were being held together by just like some string and some tinsel and just like barely holding on just so that they could hold on to that major spot. But in a way, I would rather that be the case than say like outsiders don't make it to the next major that they won the whole event for, because it kind of just like, I want to see those narratives back in action for one, and also it just feels like that should be the reward. Yeah, yes, you get this like championship sticker capsule or whatever if you win the whole thing, but if you come semifinals or in the finals of the major, like I feel like there should be something there, but there's nothing. Like you should at least have guaranteed stickers to me for the next major at a bare minimum.
I think like I think I would be okay. I was actually against that for a long time, that so many teams were legends and stuff like that and didn't have to go through everything. And then you saw when you changed it, suddenly a lot of the big teams didn't make it anymore, right? Now that was of course because it was a flawed RMR system, but let's leave it at that, right? I think like the winners should definitely be auto qualified. I mean, why not? Like, it's the winners. They have to defend their titles, right? Like, of course they need to be invited, right? And then the rest of us can battle it through. But regarding what you said, like the RMR becomes even more, like it's more important than the major itself, I think is true to especially the newer teams or the players who haven't achieved anything or very little. That's very important for them because like it is literally life-changing amount of money you're gonna get in the sticker money, right? But not only that, right? Like now they kind of made it. They got their name in the game, sticker stuff like that. I completely lost my train of thought. Yeah, I mean, like this is just like, I think like if you have the Nico, who like the Navi game where Nico failed with the deagle in the back and everything.
Oh,
right?
in the
and
final, yes.
Like yeah, and like he doesn't give a shit about stickers, right? He want to win that trophy.
Oh, of course,
that's his
yes.
goal, right?
Yes.
That I like, but that's not the same when you have into the breach semifinal or quarterfinal, what it was against Vitality, because they are just happy to be there.
Of course.
You see the difference, right? Like
yes.
They don't play to win necessarily. They play to stay alive. Now, nothing to take away from them because you can only beat the one in front of you, right? So I don't want to take anything away. Same with Gamer Legion being in the final against Vitality. Who would have, like, if you told me, oh, Gamer Legion's gonna make it to the final, I'd be like, are you on drugs or what, mate? Like, what are you talking about, right? Like, but at the same time, it felt more like, oh, go in and enjoy it, instead of saying, I want to fucking win this trophy, right? Where you could feel that from from Nico, right? Or when Kerrigan finally lifted his trophy first time, right? That meant so much more to him and everything else. So I'm a bit torn between it because I understand what you're saying with it, but I do also think if you fix the seedings and the RMR system, the whole thing, to make it, let's say, quote unquote perfect, then I think it makes more sense, the whole thing then. I don't know if it makes sense what I just said. I'm rambling here.
I would just say it this way. Like, the biggest problem I have goes like this. It's about, like, this is actually a major point about politics and society that a lot of people who are very young won't understand. It's not about, like, you can't make a law where you tell people, like, do this thing that's good and don't do the thing that's bad. What you do in society is you set up incentives. What you do is the things you want to happen, you make rewards occur for that thing being done. And then you make disincentives for, like, go to prison if you do things that you do not want, or you are fined, or it costs you socially, or you're banned from somewhere. These are things you do. So that way you don't need to tell the person. Their own self-interest, if they're not a lunatic, will mean they stay away from things that would have negatives, and things that bring them positives, they will start to do. It's actually also, people don't understand essentially how you train anyone in any field. So you don't just tell them do this and give them no reason. You give them a reward when they do the right thing, and you give them some sort of a warning / punishment / reproachment when they don't do it. It's basically what coaching also is. So my problem goes goes like this. If you were to lay out what the incentives are, Maui is quite literally correct. The most important thing, even the number one team in the world has to do, is qualify to the major. It's not win the major. Now, that is so ass backwards, it's fucking mental. Like, as he said, if you're Nico, the only goal is win the major. But actually, that's wrong. For G2, the number one goal, I know to win the major, you'd have to do this, but the most important thing isn't win the major. It's just qualify. And by the way, it's even qualify. You can even go to the first one, the challenger stage, and you could come like 24th place at this major. And that's more important to G2 than win the fucking major. So already you can see, for an org and a player, you've completely got the incentives and disincentives wrong. And as a result, here's why it's even more mental. Because if just by qualifying, now look, everyone is over-exaggerating because they heard what the blast ones are. I'll tell you right now, the reason the blast numbers for the stickers were so insane is because apparently there was something like 4 times more than Rio, the Brazilian one. That was like way less. So to be fair, it's not always millions for all the teams. Sometimes it might be like 900k. So, no, look, it's still mega money. But I mean, I don't want everyone to think every time the team qualifies you get like 3 million. You don't. That was like the biggest sticker capture. I think it was 4 million in the big one or something if you got to like the Legends one or whatever, right? So true, that's not going to be every team. But even so, it can't be that when you look at what someone did, you look, right, here's the team that won the major. Well, what did they get from that, bro? Right, they got 500k for winning and like 4 million for the stickers. So they got 4,500,000. I'm going to say in this case, I'm going to make it 4 million flat, guys, so you get the point. It can't be like, right, so essentially we rewarded them for winning the major by giving them like like an eighth of what the guy who got in the top 16 but came last get. Look, that doesn't make sense. And then similarly, if getting to the major at all is the difference between no money and 1 million, then the joke becomes all the shit he just complained about the R is even worse, because now BO1s and Randy map pools and dog shit economies and winning pistols is deciding whether the biggest orgs wasted all their money like Astralis buying the best players. What you all want, by the way, you want them to buy the best players, not have Altec and Boz, but they're just being punished for doing that because the format's incredibly shit. If instead it was like the money went like this, like qualifying gets a certain amount. Here's the obvious one to me. No one's going to like it, and I'm going to say it like this. I would make it that if the whole point of the stickers is to support like the scene in general and keep teams alive, then run the stickers all year round. And if you're an RV fan, you buy this year's sticker anyway, and they get all the money. And if you're an Astralis fan, they get all the money. That's how you support the scene. If that's actually supporting you based on who's popular. Because the other thing that's mental about this is you can't run a team like this. Here's why. Because do you know? Are you ready for the actual one that kills the whole sticker concept dead? If you think it's about merit, is whether or not you get loads of money is which capsule you're in, guys. But it isn't just which capsule. If you're in the Legends one, so think about this. Remember, I'm talking about incentives. If this system exists, you're supposed to be incentivized to win the RMR, so you get in the best sticker capsule, right? But here's the joke, Rejin, and you'll know this. If you were at the RMR and you nailed it, you 3-0'd the whole RMR, right? You're in the Legends capsule. But you know what you didn't know is that the same RMR, here's the teams that get into the other capsule. They go in the Challenger one because they came last and went 2-2. Na'Vi, FaZe Clan. You get where I'm going here. The joke is you'd now be in the wrong capsule. The joke is the Na'Vi one's the one that's going to sell. The Na'Vi Furia one guy is the one that's going to have all the money. That's what all the fans are buying. So now you could actually end up with less money from being better at the art. So again, what are these incentives? What are we telling people to do? What are we saying is good that we're rewarding in the game? It's fucking mental. Because like I said about the prize pool, you only get 100k a player for winning the major, but you can get 500k or 1 million. That doesn't make sense. Just for qualifying, like it's ass backwards. Because as Maui said, eventually it becomes that the most important thing is just qualify. It's not about anything else. And by the way, the knock-on effect is going to be like fucking Dota. Get ready, guys. Because in Dota, you always change your lineup if you don't win TI is the joke. You always do. Because it's all about gambling to get to TI, to get some prize. And it's all about... So what you want is you want like some mix between the two. You want to put maybe a bit more of the money into the prize pool. You maybe want to structure it differently. You maybe want to make it so that it's not like random luck. Like Na'Vi get their sticker sales because of their fans and you get yours because of your fans. You need some way to make it a bit fairer. Because to me, at the moment, people are only looking at the bad side. What they're doing is this. They're looking and going, but it's awesome for Saw and Guild Eagles. They get to continue as a team now. Yeah, but the point is, it's a finite amount of money. You gave essentially the money that the winner of the major would be rewarded with for being the best in the game, and you just gave it to like Amcal and Guild Eagle, even if they come last place. Like, that's a bit fucked up to me. I'm someone who believes in merit. I think if you're really good, you should be rewarded for it. And so I don't mind having some sort of a safety net. Like I say, have something to give people the money and allow you to support. Like, if you're a fan of Amcal, buy their sticker. I'd have a separate thing. But if you notice, it's not even as simple as people think. Like, well, just qualify, bro. I've just pointed out how you could actually qualify and be in the wrong capsule, which doesn't make any sense, because you don't control Na'Vi. You can't make them play the way you want to and qualify to the tournament. And by the way, it really is just a handful of the teams that make the capsule good or not. And joke is, Na'Vi's always won and Brazilians are always won. It's just the way the game's always going to be. Yeah, there we go.
I mean, like, but I think you're completely right. Like, it makes zero sense that you want to be in a challenger capsule because Na'Vi, MIBR.
Yeah, why would you? Exactly.
It makes no sense. Like, there's no merit to it. But yeah, it goes deep. I don't know.
No, it's all good.
You said it very well.
Right, the last point of the show is going to be like this. Now, this might be where I have balls, Mauisnake. I don't give a fuck that, like, you treaded on people's toes. Right, I'm going to call someone Danish out. So, Rejin's going to be in a tough spot. What's he going to do? Oh, the intrusive thoughts coming in, people hitting him in DMs. Right, here's the problem I have, is I actually am very pleasantly surprised by this fucking heroic roster, right? I'm watching it. It's like, bro, first of all, I actually wondered if Nertz was like a product of Snappy, but he isn't. By the way, that guy's just cracked. Like, I've been watching all his games in heroic. He's just really good. And because he's now had like roughly a year at tier 1, now he's getting better as well. Now he's getting more, now he like sort of knows his own game. So he is actually a bona fide stud. If people don't know, that's the one angle I'll let you laugh at Falcons for, because I heard it was his nationality that made him not get, they didn't consider signing him for that team. So that on paper is stupid once you think about in-game stuff, because imagine the same lineup without Boros. That's Nertz. Like, mate, the joke is they might win the major. It'd be fucking amazing, wouldn't it? It'll be a better version of Ents, for fuck's sake. So that one I'll give you, right? But it's not just him, the Kixon guy. Now, I get why people were headhunting him. He was good. By the way, there was other bigger name teams also in the mix for this guy. I can see why now. He obviously has something. He's got an interesting approach to the game. The others, we already talked earlier. I was a fan of Shush and Tessus anyway. I thought they were actually slightly underrated. They're players where the rating doesn't tell you what they do in the game, because as we're talking about, their rating almost isn't where their skill shows up. It's what they do to the stars. It's how they make a Yabi and a Stown look even better. That's what makes them. So I've got all these players, but you'll notice there's one name I haven't mentioned, and this is where people's feelings are going to get hurt, because the one player in this team I do think actually just isn't good enough is nicodoz the AWPer. It's shocking, because if people remember when Copenhagen Flames came along, the joke is it was him that everyone hyped. It was him and Roy. No one gave a fuck actually at the time about Yabi and Huxley and all the players who had way more. No, these were the guys everyone thought, these are the guys who were going to be the future. The nicodoz guy on Fnatic was just whatever. Bro, on this team, he's just a very meh AWPer. And the reason why I bring this up is, mate, if you drop, doesn't have to be a really, really elite one. If you just drop a good, here's a very average AWPer in my opinion. If you drop a good AWPer in this lineup, they could fucking cook. They could be really dangerous, this team. Like we were talking earlier about people like Torji, mate. Fucking drop Torji on this team, mate. They will fucking cut. They'll come like top 4 at a tournament. Like, this is not a bad, because like I said, Nertz is for real. So this lineup's actually, it's got the literal structure, the IGL, the harder parts to get, like entry and sport. You got a stud rifler. All you need is an AWPer. That's all you need, and you're right there. So I'm going to say, my ugly, notice I didn't say bad, ugly is nicodoz. Because look, he's okay in the team now, but I think it's one of the rare cases I've seen where I feel like if you just did that one change, you changed the whole team.
I mean, I agree, and then I don't agree. Let me see it like this. I see what you're saying, but I also have to say, like, nicodoz was like one of the highest rated player on HLTV, like of all players in the world, for a very long time in CS2. Like, I think he was top 10 or top 20 or something like that. Okay. And had a bonkers T-side rating, where all other AWPers had really bad T-side ratings because of the wide swings and everything, right? But in general, almost every AWPer had a bad T-side rating. He had a 125 or something like that. Insane. Like, I can't remember exactly. Maybe 127. No, it was really high. So I understand what they saw in him. Now, did he realize that potential? Can he realize that potential against tier 1? Time will tell. So I think for me, it's too early to say that he didn't. I don't think he didn't. Like, I don't think.
Oh, by the way, I should have added this one detail in. What made me even think of this is Nertz doing that interview where he was like, I think we're going to be one of the best in the world. It's like, I've got to think from that perspective. It's like, here's why you aren't, mate. Because, like, the point is, when you go up against Shiro, Z, you're going to get your fucking ass handed to you. You just are. I'm sorry, you know.
Yeah, but I think you might be right because like we also have to think like the why nicodoz had these stats was because he was in Prezi, right? And they played a lot of tournament and they won a lot, right? So there is like this two-edged side of things, right? But I think he needs at least he should be allowed to prove himself. Let's put it like that. But I didn't at the same time. I didn't think he was showing himself off when he was in Fnatic. Both him and Roy, right? Where they didn't look like themselves at all. So it's gonna be for me. I think he deserves a spot there. Let's see in a couple of months and see if he is good enough or not.
Okay.
If the stats back up, that's how I see it. But like since he's been joining Heroic and played against the best teams in the world, I can say I quickly looked. His stats are not the same. It's not in the bin, but it's like 112 or something like that, right?
Yes.
Which is not completely bad, but when you want to be like when you compare it to a Monesi who has like 147 or something like that, right? Like I don't know how much he has, but it's really ridiculously high, right? So of course then it's like quote unquote bad, right? When you look at like the Shiros, Saivu, etc.
Yeah, trying to remember heroic games and their moments because I did watch them a lot, but the nicodoz, I would say that the T side stuff with nicodoz that I think you're referring to is that I remember when watching him in particular when he was playing for heroic, like he's actually really solid with the AK. Like that's one thing I would say. I didn't really.
He uses AK way more than the AWP, especially in the Prezi days. I didn't watch that many heroic games, gonna be honest, but he used it AK a lot more than AWPing.
Well, he actually in CS2 he has 767 AK kills, 470 AWP kills.
Oh wow.
He literally
it's
not he's just flat out not even probably AWPing at all on T side based off of those numbers because on CT and then beyond that he has about 400 or he has 360 M4 kills. So it's like he's kind of the definition of a hybrid right now. And I will say that actually, like legitimately, when watching him rifle, he's pretty good. Like especially with the AK, I've actually seen many rounds where he's gotten a multi-frag, brought them back. It's just that he doesn't do it with the AWP, and I think we're kind of past the point where you think you can have championship aspirations without an operator. Sure you can make it through an RMR. Sure you can fit into the system of your team without having like Cloud9's obviously doing it right now to an extent. I mean, like I'm saying, like MOUZ did very well, and Torzi was one of their worst players at this RMR also. So it's like the op is a little bit less important, I would say, but it's still over the course of a series, you do need to have some sort of op presence, or else anybody on the opposing team that is able to wield that weapon, you're just going to get completely destroyed by. So for me, nicodoz, he's easily the weak spot of heroic. Goes without saying. If I look at even teams ranked in the top 15 by HLTV, I would say that he's pretty clearly the worst opper. Other than, again, I'll just bring up like Cloud9, obviously.
I mean, by the way, I just realised the obvious example I should have given was just Kixon's old team. He used to have Nork. That guy looked really great under him. I thought it would have worked really well.
Maybe Woxic has actually been worse lately.
Okay.
But that's it.
But I think also that there is one thing to the whole thing here is that I think you have to divide it up between CT and T side, because like in general T side, all the AWPers besides Monesi, I don't know what he's doing, right? Like he's literally for me the only one who makes AWPing looks good on a T side.
Oh, of course.
I have not seen a single AWPer where I'm thinking, oh.
No. Like if people don't know, Shiro basically goes last. That's like his job is to be at the back.
It's the same with James, right?
Yeah,
like, and that is actually artificially bumping up their rating when that happens, right? So when you look at it, like I cannot say a good AWPer besides Monesi on T side. And I think it goes to show also with Saivu, like he also prefers the AK many times over the AWP, right?